Chapter 76. It was like finding out that a 100 million lottery ticket had expired, just like his wife ran away with his brother, and the child was not his own. Man? Demon Slayer? Doma's heart was hit by 1 billion points of critical strikes, and he couldn't understand why the guys from the Demon Slayer Corps could find this place. The air temperature around Doma dropped sharply. Maybe he didn't know what anger was, but he knew that the man in front of him deserved to die. While Doma was stunned, Kiritani Zanto immediately drew his sword, and a fire dragon spewed flames, which was the flame-breathing 8th form Fulong Flash. This was the effect he wanted. The sword energy crossed the sky, but Doma suddenly waved the golden fan in his hand. Countless ice crystals were like a strong wind, easily offsetting Kiritani Zanto's attack. Doma quickly retreated, pointed at Kiritani and asked, "You surprised me, so I'm going to kill you. Tell me how you found this place, I can consider giving you a quick death." Doma can be sure that there has never been an upper rank being found by the Demon Slayer Corps in hundreds of years, and no one has even seen an upper rank still alive. Although the demons have never found the Demon Slayer Corps, the balance was broken today, which also shows that there is something wrong with the Demon Slayer Corps of this era. I must tell this news to Lord Muzan. Kiritani made a face and said with extreme disgust, "I won't tell you, Tisk." Kiritani drew his sword and rushed straight towards Doma, and blew a whistle at the same time. Taromaru flapped his wings and flew high, and the loud crow cry pierced the sky. Tisk! Doma quickly waved the fan in his hand, and at the same time, dozens of ice cones condensed on the top of Kiritani's head, revealing a metallic luster. Instantly, a vortex of flames surrounded Kiritani Sento, and his ice cones that were close to him were melted instantly. However, when he turned around, Doma had already kicked him with a whip kick. With a loud bang, Kiritani Sento penetrated 2 wooden houses in succession and disappeared into the night. Doma glanced at his torn pants. He knew that the previous attack could not kill the opponent because the kick hit the opponent's knife firmly. "Oh my god, what a speed, outrageous!" Kiritani Sento complained. If he hadn't used the wind-breathing 7th type strong wind Tengu wind in time, several bones would have been broken. Gyutomyoka, who was rushing to the battlefield, changed direction immediately after hearing the sound. He jumped over the big hole between the houses and shouted at the top of his voice, "Rabbit, are you dead?" As soon as Gyutomyoka finished speaking, Kiritani Sento's voice full of resentment came from the depths. "I said, you dead face paralysis, you are looking forward to my death." Gyutomyoka answered decisively, "No." It was so direct, without any explanation. 11th form Nagi. Gyutomyoka shouted out his own moves with a calm face. During the spell, he entered the state of tranquility and stillness, and at the same time, all spells within the attack range of his blade were invalidated. As soon as the voice fell, a large number of ice crystals swept in, like clouds but as sharp as razors, and the place where Gyutomyoka was instantly turned into ruins. Doma walked into the house slowly, with a confident smile on his face, even though the opponent had 2 pillars. So 2 bugs sneaked in. "Tell me, how did you find this place? My patience is limited." Kiritani Sento took a deep breath, and the sky-high red fighting spirit dyed the whole room red, and the flames that could devour everything ignited on the sun wheel sword. Breathing of flame secret 9 form purgatory. Kiritani Sento rushed forward at a high speed, leaving a burning mark wherever he passed, like a road to purgatory. Gyutomyoka released Nagi's state, and the 10 form life flow was swung out, and the gentle water became violent, and a small stream gradually entangled Gyutomyoka. As he continued to spin and tumble, the small stream turned into a giant dragon, with the momentum to tear everything apart. Kiritani Sento and Gyutomyoka were on the left and right, and the flames and water illuminated the entire room. The overwhelming momentum made the wooden house creak, but Doma still had a smile on his face, as if everything was under control. Seeing the 2 sword skills coming, Doma vigorously waved the golden folding fan in his hand, and the pink and purple lotus and green lotus leaves on the folding fan danced. The blood demon art of Cold White Princess was activated, and 2 ice lotuses in the form of girls appeared on the left and right of Doma. The girls were light and agile, and although they were made of ice, they had the texture of flesh. The 2 lotus girls blew out cold air, white the mist spread all around instantly. In the blink of an eye, the floor near Doma was dyed white, and then shattered like ice. Crack! Crack! The crisp sound accompanied the breath of the girl, playing the elegy of death. However, the flame and water dragon broke through the defense of the freezing air in an instant, and Doma had to become a little more serious. He waved the fan again, and the blood demon art freezing cloud was activated, and the cloud-like ice crystals once again buffered the sword skills of the two. Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiyu looked solemn and used their greatest strength directly. However, a large number of ice cones were generated above the heads of the three people, and Doma's iron fan, like a knife, went straight to Kiritani Sento. Just a face-to-face, Doma had already judged who was stronger and weaker between the two. He planned to kill the weaker one and ask the stronger one a question. Is it that the upper string is too low-key or that humans are too ignorant? The two pillars want to challenge themselves, which is completely delusional. Tomioka Jiyu quickly turned the blade and blocked all the ice cones, but Doma's iron fan also changed the rules. In a breath, the target became Tomioka Jiyu. Kiritani Sento's knife sank into Doma's shoulder, but it instantly pierced his shoulder. Kiritani Sento blocked Doma's fatal blow in time. With the help of Getsuga Hitomi, Kiritani Sento naturally saw Doma's fake move. However, due to the change of the blade, it was not enough to block the impact of the iron fan, and both of them flew backwards. Doma elegantly put away his fan, pointed at Tomioka Jiyu and said, "I'm going to kill him." Then he pointed at Kiritani Sento and said, "Your eyes are really beautiful, I want to eat them." Kiritani Sento said with disdain, "Eat your head, I'm here to kill you." Doma spread his hands, looking particularly innocent, "You can't kill me, but I will definitely eat your eyes." Kiritani Sento steadied his shaking hands. He had to admit that Doma was annoying but very strong. Tomioka Jiyu also clenched his Nichiren sword, blood was already seeping from his knuckles. Chapter 77. The cherry blossoms danced under the moon like natural elves. The dark red mansion in the distance lay quietly on the hillside, and loud noises kept coming out from it. Fuzugawa Shia frowned. Taromaru had already sent a signal. It seemed that the two of them had already fought with upper rank too. Quick, let's speed up. Iguro Obanai could no longer suppress his excitement. The garbage of lower rank could no longer bear the anger in his heart. Kyojuro raised his Nichiren sword and shouted loudly, "Charge!" Just as the two approached the wall, two figures broke through the wall, accompanied by ice crystals rushing like a tide. Kyojuro took a deep breath, the scorching flame lit up, and the ice crystals were instantly melted. Fushigi Miya caught Tomioka Jiyu, and Iguro Obanai caught Kiritani Sento. Their originally excited hearts suddenly became nervous. Rabbit's strength can be said to be one of the strongest among the pillars. Although the face paralysis guy is annoying, his strength is not bad. The few people never expected that the two of them would be suppressed even if they joined forces to fight against upper rank too. Kyojuro's hearty laughter instantly broke the serious atmosphere at the scene. He said with concern, "Rabbit, brother face paralysis, are you okay?" Kiritani Sento gave a thumbs up and responded with a smile, "Brother, you came just in time." Jiyu Tomioka patted the dust off his body and said calmly, "It's very strong, really strong." Iguro Obanai lowered his face and glared at Jiyu Tomioka. He complained dissatisfiedly, "Just say some discouraging words, let me see how strong it is." Iguro Obanai was the first to step into the gap, his eyes were like a venomous snake, as if he would poison the demon to death in the next second. "Ha ha ha, 5 against 1, the advantage is on us." The eldest brother rushed into the gap second, like a lion running on the grassland. Fuzugawa Miya climbed up the wall and made a winning gesture to Kiritani and Sento. Kiritani Sento immediately used healing skills to restore the wounds on him and Tomioka Jiyu. He didn't believe that such a team would lose to that bastard Doma. 5 different colors of feathers fluttered in the wind, sharp venomous snakes, fiery lions, free eagles, calm fish, and miraculous rabbits. Demon Slayer F5 officially joined forces and a battle to break the balance between humans and demons began. Kyojuro was wrapped in flames. Unlike Kiritani Sento, his flame was the purest without any impurities. Kyojuro did not hold back and directly launched the secret of the breath of fire, the 9th form, the Purgatory. Iguro Obanai also used the final sword skill, the 5th form, the Winding Long Snake. The shadow of a snake is revealed in Iguro Obanai's moves, advancing at a very fast speed, and the sword path is also like a snake-like winding slash. A white snake surrounds Iguro Obanai, like an enlarged version of Kabutomaru. The white snake spits out its tongue, and its yellow vertical pupils stare closely at Doma's neck. The two of them flanked Doma from the left and right, and Fuzugawa Miya dropped from the sky, and the enhanced version of the 5 types, Cold Autumn Falling Mountain Wind was activated, and the black sword energy was mixed in the emerald green tornado, and he blocked Doma's way up. Doma's face was full of smiles, and he even complained, "So this is your confidence? 5 pillars are dispatched at the same time, it turns out that the Demon Slayer Corps had planned it long ago. It's a pity that ants are ants after all, and you are just weak and fragile humans. Doma, you fart, ants will bite you to death anyway." Kiritani Sento's angry voice passed through the wall and reached everyone's heart. He held 2 swords. Breathing 1 type water and fire dragon dance was activated, and 2 giant dragons surrounded the blades and attacked Doma's face. And Tomiokajiya had come behind Doma without knowing when, and the 7th type Shizuka wave stab was activated. As the fastest move in water breathing, water drops came from the slope, like a rippling water surface. The attacks of several people were launched almost at the same time. Doma only had a few seconds to react, otherwise he would be pierced through the neck by the violent sword skills. The colorful sword skills covered the entire square, as gorgeous as fireworks blooming in the night sky. I saw Doma put his hands together and closed his eyes, as if everything around him had nothing to do with him. In just a breath, a huge phantom appeared, and the temperature of the entire mansion dropped by several degrees. Doma launched the strongest move in the ritual, Blood Demon Art Mist Ice Water Lily Bodhisattva. The phantom turned into a real object, and the ice crystals gathered into a huge ice man, with the appearance of a bodhisattva with his hands folded, and Doma stood firmly on top of the water lily bodhisattva. The height of the water lily bodhisattva has exceeded the statue standing in the center of the square, and it is 15 meters high. Ghost Slayer F5 is like an ant in front of it. This bodhisattva does not save sentient beings, but only creates killing karma. The successive attacks all hit the water lily bodhisattva. The powerful impact directly split the water lily bodhisattva in half. White ice crystals gushed out like blood, and Doma was unharmed. Seeing that the situation was not good, everyone retreated to the back. Unfortunately, the gushing ice crystals actually flowed back, and the water lily bodhisattva returned to its original appearance. Doma stood on the water lily bodhisattva, looking down at everything. He did not believe that there were gods and Buddhas in the world, and he also felt that the so-called heaven and hell were just illusions. At this moment, he was a god, and humans were ants. The huge noise had long awakened the believers of the eternal paradise religion, and they dared to come to the square. Looking at the water lily bodhisattva standing in the center of the square and Doma standing high above, everyone knelt down devoutly. Some people even shouted loudly, "Miracle, this is simply a miracle. The gods are clearly working. Long live the patriarch! Long live the patriarch!" The huge square was instantly covered by cheers and joy. Doma looked down at everything, he opened his arms, but his eyes were full of disdain and disgust. "Humans, what boring creatures! I just performed a spell and was regarded as a miracle, so stupid, they are only worthy of being eaten. Tisk! These fools, gods! That's a man-eating ghost!" Iguro Obanai complained with an unhappy face. Looking at the people worshipping below, Doma suddenly had an interesting idea. He pointed at Demon Slayer F5 and said, "My devout believers, look over there, they are blasphemers, and God has punished them for it. Go, use your hands to eliminate the sinners who disobey God." As soon as Doma finished speaking, the believers who were originally worshipping stood up, picked up the brooms and buckets beside them, and rushed towards Kiritani and Sento with big strides. Chapter 78. The human beings he had risked his life to protect turned against him. What would the pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps think? "Go, clean up the blasphemers, and you will be saved." Doma smiled and even exaggerated. He was impressed by the silver-haired swordsman, but he had to kill him with his own hands. Iguro Obanai's face was livid, but the Demon Slayer Corps had a rule that ordinary people could not be killed. He pointed at Doma and cursed, "You idiots, he is a demon, what a bullshit god." Iguro Obanai's words could be said to have stirred up 1,000 waves. The believers loudly refuted, and a large number of people surrounded Iguro Obanai. "You blasphemer, you should be burned at the stake." "Yes, burn him to death." Iguro Obanai disdained to pay attention to those stupid believers, easily dodged the attack, and then jumped lightly to the side of the water lily bodhisattva. However, just as Iguro Obanai swung his knife, several desperate believers directly protected the water lily bodhisattva with their bodies. Iguro Obanai gritted his teeth and stopped the blade in time. "Tisk! Get out of here!" Iguro Obanai kicked the believers away with a few kicks, turned around and jumped onto the water lily bodhisattva. The other few people went around the believers and ran straight to the water lily bodhisattva. In front of everyone, the believers were like primary zombies, as slow as a turtle. Seeing the blade approaching, Doma still sat calmly. He raised his hand slightly, and the water lily bodhisattva also made the same move. A huge ice hand knife smashed into the crowd, and Doma asked with a smile, "What are you going to do next? Kill me, or save the people who killed you?" Kirya Sento frowned and cursed, "You bastard, damn it!" In addition to Aguro Obanai who rushed to the water lily bodhisattva, Kyojuro, Tomioka Jiyu and Fushigawamiya Miya all released sword skills to catch the hand knife of the water lily bodhisattva. Kirya Sento pulled the believer who was standing there out. The flames touched the ice knife, and white mist evaporated, but it condensed into ice crystals in an instant. Kyojuro and the other two retreated immediately. They all remembered that Kirya Sento emphasized not to inhale ice crystals. After all, ice crystals will destroy the alveoli, which is extremely poisonous to those who use breathing methods. The man who was saved by Kiritani Sento pushed him away with a look of disgust, yelling, "Stay away from me, disgusting! You!" Kiritani Sento was so angry that he couldn't speak for a moment. He even had some doubts. Should he risk his life to save these guys? Iguro Obanai had already climbed onto the shoulders of the water lily bodhisattva, and Kyojuro and the other two also surrounded the water lily bodhisattva. Iguro Obanai stared at Doma with his teeth bared, and he roared, "Go to hell, you disgusting guy!" Snake breathing 5 type activated, the white giant snake opened its bloody mouth, and its sharp fangs aimed at Doma's neck. "Ah! Do you hate me so much?" Doma stood up and gently waved the folding fan in his hand. But he suddenly froze for a moment, and black blood flowed out of Doma's 7 orifices, and Doma was stunned. When? Why was he poisoned? No, it's that wine, that silver swordsman. Iguro Obanai's mouth corners rose, the opportunity has come, the careless guy, must have been poisoned. Die, even the upper strings must die. The double-edged blade flashed with a faint cold light, and Iguro Obanai used the greatest strength of his life. At this critical moment, an ice sculpture that looks like Doma appeared. It was the blood demon art crystallization of the goddess. This technique does not require waving an iron fan to create a small ice man who can fight independently. The appearance is the same as Doma himself, and the ice god can even use Doma's blood demon art. Iguro Obanai's knife was crooked, and the crystal god shattered with a sound, but another ice god appeared behind him. At the same time, the ice god waved the fan of the ice sculpture, and the blood demon art lotus leaf ice was activated, and dozens of sharp ice lotuses flew towards Iguro Obanai. Iguro Obanai activated the second form, the narrow-headed fangs, and the amazing fighting spirit surrounded him, and countless poisonous snakes bit the ice lotus. Doma seized the opportunity and kicked out, and the black fighting spirit shattered like glass, and Iguro Obanai flew backwards, and a blood-red arc cut through the sky. Iguro Obanai fell into the dark red wall. Kiritani Sento rushed to Obanai with a worried look on his face, "Little snake." The believer he saved suddenly blocked Kiritani Sento, and he said with a smug look on his face, "See, this is the fate of those who blaspheme the gods." Kiritani Sento's veins popped up, he had never hated a human so much, and the murderous intent that was almost materialized enveloped the man, and he collapsed to the ground in fear. "Get out of here! Stupid humans!" Doma stood up tremblingly and gently wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He had already decomposed the toxins in his body. Doma waved the iron fan in his hand vigorously, and countless ice lotuses filled the sky above the square. Blood demon art, winter icicles was activated, and thousands of sharp ice cones enveloped everyone. Doma raised the volume to the highest, and his playful voice echoed throughout the square. "There is no paradise in this world. This is just a story created by your human delusion. Gods and Buddhas are also a joke. The so-called heaven and hell are just fantasies. Once you humans, such pathetic creatures, die, you will turn into nothingness and feel nothing. After your brain and heart stop and your body rots, you will return to dust. So, everything you believe in is false, including me. I really hate you bugs from the bottom of my heart." Doma's words were like the devil's whisper, which was no less than a nuclear bomb for the believers who always believed in the eternal paradise. At this moment, all the believers had a mental breakdown, and some even knelt on the ground and cried. Doma even did not forget to joke, "I have always believed that I have the advantage of treating people with sincerity. It turns out that I feel comfortable when I tell the truth." Kiritani Sento stared at the high-ranking Doma. He felt that all his plans were reasonable, but these brain-dead believers were too unexpected. If it were a normal person, he would have run away when he saw the water lily bodhisattva. Who knew that these guys had been interfering with everyone? Self-blame and guilt instantly filled Kiritani Sento's heart. Doma stared at Kiritani Sento intently, and he liked the expression of the silver-haired swordsman. At first, he had the same confidence on his face as himself, but now his confidence is gone. Ha ha ha! Doma was as happy as a child. He controlled the water lily bodhisattva, and smashed the huge fist that was big enough to cover the sky heavily on Iguro Obane under the ruins. At the same time, 4 crystal children surrounded Kyojuro and the other 2. Countless ice cones also fell at this moment. Doma controlled the fate of everyone present with his own strength. Chapter 79. A hollow voice sounded, and Doma said with interest, "Come on, I'll give you a second choice, silver-haired swordsman. Save those bugs or your friends." Kiritani Sento suddenly laughed out loud. He clenched the double swords in his hands, and 3 different fighting spirits suddenly burst out of his body, with the violence of fire, the sharpness of wind and the tranquility of water. The 3 kinds of fighting spirits of red, black, and blue complemented each other, dyeing the fist that occupied half of the sky red. The tornado dyed red by the flames was spinning wildly with Kiritani Sento as the eye of the wind. The strange thing was that the flame tornado was also mixed with a blue crescent-shaped blade wind. It was the breathing of the eyes type 5 wind, fire, water, and sky in one color. At the same time, Kiritani Sento's breathing began to become heavy. He tried to combine the 3 breathing methods for the first time, and this move was tantamount to pulling a dangerous trigger. Every cell in Kiritani's body was screaming in pain, and his silver crescent pupils were shining, revealing a murderous aura. Kiritani's chest kept making sounds similar to bubbles breaking, except that it was his alveoli that kept breaking. Originally, the fusion of 2 breathing methods at the same time was strong enough, but Kiritani found that it was not enough to fight against the upper strings, so he made an attempt. There is no doubt that Doma has now gone all out, and the strength of the upper strings has exceeded Kiritani's expectations, which once again reminded him that this is the real world, not the comics. Kiritani rubbed his 2 swords, and the stars of fire bloomed under the night sky, as dazzling as a sky full of stars, and after a crisp metallic sound, Kiritani's originally black blade turned red, and the air around the blade began to become agitated. Is this the red sword? Kiritani's momentum has once again risen to a higher level. The colors of the sun blade used by different breathing methods are different. Only the sun blade of the swordsman of sun breathing and flame breathing is red. However, the swords of swordsmen of other breathing methods can also be turned red through some methods. This is the strongest blade that can burn everything, the red blade. The damage of the red blade to the demon is no different from the sun. The regeneration ability of the demon hit by the red blade will drop rapidly. Even Muzan Kibutsuji will take a long time to regenerate after being hit by the red blade. There are 2 ways to activate the red blade. One is the intense friction between the 2 blades, and the other is to turn the blade red through strong grip. Kiritani Sento also talked about the use of the red blade, but only the invincible Gyume of Sadness Island can turn the blade red through grip. Others can only generate heat through friction, but the red blade is not as easy to trigger as imagined. The friction between the 2 blades is not good if it is too small, and too large will cause the blade to break. This mission started too hastily, and everyone has not yet reached the level of perfect cooperation. The huge fist that made the air buzz was instantly shattered when it came into contact with the fire tornado, and ice crystals were scattered all over the sky, just like snow. However, these ice crystals were repelled by the azure blade wind before they could fall to the ground. Then the heat wave swept the entire square, and the falling ice cones melted one after another. The low roar of Kiritani Zanto resounded throughout the square. He said to all the stupid believers, "Did you see the face of that guy clearly? If you see it clearly, get out of here. Otherwise, I will kill you for him." Kiritani Zanto turned his head suddenly, and his murderous eyes seemed to nail the believer to the spot. "Shut up and get out." This was the believer who mocked Iguro Obanai. Perhaps Kiritani Zanto's words aroused the believer's fear of death, and they ran out of the wall like crazy. The momentum that had been extremely low was pulled up by Kiritani Sento. Kyojuro's inspiring laughter appeared. He seized the opportunity and smashed the 4 ice crystals in one fell swoop. Tomioka Jiyu and Fushigawamiya Miya also smashed the ice crystals, but the 3 of them had already been dyed red with blood. Although the strength of the Crystal Princess is not as good as Doma, they can all release Doma's blood demon arts, and their strength is not weaker than a lower-ranked demon. This is why the Demon Slayer Corps has been unable to kill the upper-ranked demons for hundreds of years. Not only are they extremely powerful, but their blood demon arts are also ever-changing. Kyojuro's 3 swords gathered together, and 3 beautiful arcs passed by. Fortunately, everyone's swords turned red, and 3 more red swords lit up. Doma's 2 hand knives all chopped towards Kiritani Sento. He felt that the sword with a red glow was very disgusting. For him, it was like a maggot in a cesspool. That sword is dangerous, and it has been carrying the confident Doma felt a sense of crisis for the first time. Just as Kiritani Sento was about to swing his sword to block the hand knife, warm flames enveloped him, and the voice of his elder brother came with the flames, "Rabbit, come on. Brother is with you." The flowing water dragon also smashed another hand knife, and Tomiokaji nodded seriously. Countless ice crystals sprayed out. This was the second attack of the water lily bodhisattva. Anyone who touched it would be instantly frozen into an ice sculpture. Fuzugawa Shia swung the fiery red sword, and the 8th form, the first fierce wind slash, was activated. 9 spiral wind blades surrounded Kiritani Sento, and the annoying ice crystals flew away with the wind. The 4 people moved forward almost synchronously, but Kiritani Sento was always 1 step behind the other 3. Rather than being 1 step behind, it was better to say that the other 3 were clearing the way for Kiritani Sento. Kiritani Sento put the sword back into the scabbard, and a silver light ball lit up on his hand. The originally broken alveoli returned to normal, and his breathing became much smoother. At this moment, Kiritani Sento does not need a knife, his good brother is the knife in his hand. The advantage of the Demon Slayer Corps is not the strength of the individual but because they have a united heart. Facing Doma's rain-like hand knife, Kyojuro and the other 2 can always accurately block every attack. The 3 people have the same idea in their hearts, and the simultaneous use of 3 kinds of breathing has shown that the rabbit is the last knife of the few people. All they can do is clear all obstacles for the rabbit, clear all obstacles that prevent the rabbit from cutting off Doma's neck. You guys are very interesting. It's worth my full effort. As soon as Doma finished speaking, he suddenly jumped off the water lily bodhisattva, and countless ice lotuses protected Doma in the center. The 2 golden iron fans in Doma's hands were condensed together by the ice, and the air around him kept making exploding sounds. The facts will prove that everything you Demon Slayer Corps did was in vain. As soon as Doma finished speaking, more than a dozen crystal children fell with the hand knife of the water lily bodhisattva. There were also bursts of noises coming from under the dark red bricks of the wall. Chapter 80. The winding white snake passed by Kiritani Sento, and Iguro Obanai's eyes were full of trust. The fiery red blade crushed the crystal child blocking Doma. Blue veins crawled all over Iguro Obanai's body like little snakes. White-hot air kept gushing out of his hands, accompanied by the sizzling sound of barbecue. This is also one of the disadvantages of stimulating the red sword by gripping, because the scar heats up first, so the palm will be burned first. However, Iguro Obanai, who hates ghosts to the bone, doesn't care about any pain at all. Not being able to kill ghosts is the most painful thing. The 2 hand knives that covered the sky were also resolved by Fushigawara Shia and Tomiokaji. Doma was shocked by this sudden swordsman. He should have lost his ability to move. His kick was not light. Iguro Obanai and the other 2 opened a gap, and Kyojuro melted all the defenses around Doma with a move of purgatory, and also cut off Doma's left arm. How is it possible? Why can't it grow back? Doma felt the burning sensation that penetrated into his bones for the first time, and now he finally knew why he hated that knife so much. That was the fear from the cells of Master Muzan, and that was a knife that was enough to suppress the ability to regenerate. Cough cough cough. Iguro Obanai lay on the ground with a painful face, and there was a pool of blood in front of him. Slutty rabbit, don't worry about me, I'll entrust that knife to you too. Hack him to death. Iguro Obanai shouted loudly. Iguro Obanai didn't know how to curse, but the rabbit taught him well, and most of the people who were familiar with him learned many words that did not belong to this era. Iguro Obanai, who had been lying under the ruins, could actually hear every word from outside. Rabbit, who was not easy to get angry, would get angry with his followers for him, so how could he lie there? Iguro Obanai raised his head, and his originally fierce eyes became soft. He stared at the back of Kiritani Sento. Come on, rabbit. Doma no longer had time to be surprised by the knives of these guys. Every cell in his body was mobilized to the extreme, and the speed of others suddenly slowed down a lot. For hundreds of years, this was the first time that Doma went all out to deal with ant-like humans. If it were in the past, he would have been incredible to be able to hold on to him for so long. Who knew that today these 5 guys would actually force out their survival instincts? Doma threw out a sharp folding fan, which passed Kyojuro and went straight to Kiritani Sento. By the time everyone found out, it was too late to stop it. They just felt that this was the full strength of upper rank 2. This guy didn't even use his full strength until his arm was cut off. Fuziwigawashima poured all his strength into his feet, and the ground cracked inch by inch. He used his body to protect Kiritani Sento. Although the folding fan missed, it still pierced into Fuziwigawashima's heart. Only a few inches away, the folding fan would have pierced Fuziwigawashima's heart. He showed a confident smile, turned around quickly with the help of sword skills, and all the blood as red wine was sprinkled on Doma. Doma's pupils trembled slightly, it was the smell of thin blood. But what Doma didn't know was that Fuziwigawashima's blood had the effect of a drunkard. Fuziwigawashima spit out a large mouthful of blood, which fell directly on Kiritani Sento's shoulder. Kiritani Sento's black team uniform was stained with blood. "Rabbit, you helped me, I will never allow you to fall before me. Hedgehog head, you." Kiritani Sento's eyes were moist. Iguro Obanai and Fushigawara Minoru clearly hated demons to the core. They both believed in killing demons with their own hands, but today they both gave themselves the opportunity to swing their swords. At this moment, Kiritani Sento swung the sword of not only one person but everyone. Kiritani Sento gently put Fushigawara Minoru on the ground. He drew out his 2 swords, and the red swords lit up again as the blades rubbed against each other. Then Kiritani Sento's whole body was filled with heat. He could really feel his body temperature soaring, and his heartbeat exceeded 200 times. It was as if someone had lit a fire in his body. A bloody line ran through the right half of Kiritani Sento's face, and the silver crescent moon spread from the corner of his eye to his neck like a galaxy. In just one breath, Kiritani Sento came to Doma, with absolute confidence on his lips. That confidence came from the lines on his right face, the stripes. Kiritani Sento has always been troubled by how to open the stripes. It can be said that he knows the stripes, but the stripes don't know him. The stripes are like a lock, what he needs is the key to open the lock, but what Kiritani Sento lacks is also the key. But now he knows that without the key, everything depends on feeling. The markings can be said to be a powerful weapon of the Demon Slayer core. Not only can it greatly improve their combat capabilities, but the user's body will also have markings that symbolize the opening of the markings. The markings on different marking swordsmen are also different. However, the markings are also a life-threatening plan. If ordinary people want to open the markings, they need to have a body temperature of 39 degrees and a heart rate of more than 200. At this time, the human body will be as hot as if it is about to burn, and whether they can survive after entering this high-risk state becomes a problem. Kiritani Sento is not worried about the disadvantages of the markings at all. Crescent moon eye can even cure cancer, so the markings are naturally a piece of cake. Doma was completely confused. How did this guy keep up with his speed? What are the markings like evil spirits? But the next second, a figure emerged. Doma remembered that the powerful Mr. Kokushibo also had similar markings on his body. Kiritani Sento tightly grasped the Nichiren blade in his hand, and the figures of his brothers appeared behind him. Breathing 5 forms: wind, fire, water, and sky are one color activated. The scorching flame tornado cut off the lazy waist of the water lily bodhisattva, and the water lily bodhisattva slammed heavily on the statue of Doma. With a bang, the statue fell down and was broken into pieces. Doma tightly grasped another iron fan, and between the blade light and the fan shadow, the floor tiles around the two were blown by the wind, and a semicircular pit appeared in a short while. Kiritani Sento suppressed upper rank 2 with his own strength. This is the power of the stripes. Kiritani Sento has gathered the 2 sets of restraining evil spirits, the stripes and the red sword, and the transparent realm is no longer important, because the moon eye will make up for everything. Doma's ice lotus technique will be shattered by Kiritani Sento as soon as it appears. He has been forced into a dead end by a human he despises the most. Chapter 81. 2 blade lights, one red and one blue, cut through the night sky, and Doma completely lost both arms. How is this possible? Doma looked at Kiritani Sento in disbelief. Nothing is impossible. Kiritani Sento stepped on the ground with his right foot, and the powerful force carved spider web-like patterns on the black rock, and the stone fragments hummed. Kiritani Sento swung the blade in his hand with all his strength, and Doma's pupils were as big as a lantern. Doma came all the way, promoted from upper 6 to upper 2, and there was still a smile on his lips, but this time it was a trembling smile. Doma felt like he was drowning, and he shouldn't have this feeling as an immortal. I can't die, I can't just die like this. Doma shouted in his heart, and Kiritani Sento's blade had already cut off half of the opponent's neck. However, the next moment, a blue folding fan slashed from the other end of Doma's neck, cutting off Doma's neck before Kiritani Sento. More than a dozen crystal children all blocked Doma, but this only bought him a few seconds. Doma jumped out of the big pit holding his head and ran madly towards the collapsed statue. The glory belonging to the upper string was completely shattered. Doma cut off his neck and ran away like a pug with its tail tucked between its legs. Kiritani Sento jumped out of the big pit and chased after him like crazy, but the sequelae of using 3 kinds of breathing at the same time surged like a tide. Kiritani Sento really felt like he was drowning and had difficulty breathing, but he couldn't stop yet. Doma must die. Kiritani Sento roared, "Stop right there, where's the energy you just had? Come on! I'll fight you for another 300 rounds. Doma, I'll F your grandpa." Doma put his head back on as if nothing had happened, secretly thinking that he was smart. If he hadn't let Hyoko cut off his head in time, he would have really died today. At this moment, another figure fell from the sky, or to be more precise, a white pot fell from the sky. The pot was full of red fish scales, and all the scales were arranged in a rotation around an eye. A white ghost was hanging above the mouth of the pot, looking very much like a fairy from a magic lamp. The ghost was all white, with yellow eyeballs, green lips, purple fins on the top of its head, a mouth where the eyes were the forehead and mouth were, and a few small arms grew from the side of its head. Crooked is not enough to describe this alien ghost. However, the faces of Kiritani Sento and Kyojuro turned serious. The appearance of this alien ghost tilted the originally one-sided balance back to Doma's side. After all, the eyes on the forehead of the ghost said upper string, and the eyes on the mouth said 5. There is no doubt that this ghost is the upper string 5, Tame-wo. Facing the intrusive Tame-wo, Doma and Kiritani Sento both stopped him, and Tame-wo's helpless little hands moved back and forth in the air. He just wanted to give Mr. Doma a pot on a whim. After all, he liked the pot he gave Mr. Doma last time, and used it to decorate his favorite head. Tame-wo claims to be an artist of pots. As long as he doesn't scold his pots, everything will be fine. Therefore, he also respects and appreciates Doma, who admires his pots. The two ghosts have a good personal relationship. Tame-wo simply ignored Kiritani Sento and his group, and smiled and greeted Doma, who was standing in the ruins. "Mr. Doma, long time no see. Hey! Where did your arms go? Why didn't they grow back? Also, look at my new pot." Yahoo was talking to himself. Doma responded with a smile, "Yahoo, I don't have time today. As you can see, I was attacked by the pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps. They broke into my house without saying anything. First, they smashed my house, then drove away my believers and destroyed my statues. The worst thing is that they want to kill me. What a group of pitiful bugs." Because of Yahoo's arrival, Doma regained his confidence. He was like a victim of a break-in, pitifully counting the crimes of Kiritani Sento and his group. Yahoo turned his head and looked at Kiritani Sento and his group. He showed disgust on his face. The other party was the bugs of the Demon Slayer Corps. Kiritani Sento took a deep breath and whispered, "Brother, Jiyu, take Shimizu and Obanai away quickly. Another upper rank has arrived. The situation is not good." Kyojuro supported Kiritani Sento and retorted with a smile, "No, leave the rearguard work to me. I am big brother." Jiyu Tomioka did not speak, he held the sword tightly to protect Kiritani Sento. The sudden appearance of the upper string was indeed unexpected. Maybe he will die today. But Rabbit must not be killed today, he is the ultimate weapon of the Demon Slayer Corps against the Demon King. Rabbit has just perfectly demonstrated his talent that far exceeds everyone present, and mastering 3 breathing methods at the same time is simply unheard of. As soon as Jiyu Tomioka finished speaking, the stripes quietly climbed onto his cheeks, just like his calm heart. Jiyu's stripes are dark blue wavy textures, which are very consistent with the water breathing. The stripes are like they can be contagious, also climbed onto Kyojuro's cheeks, and there were more dancing flames on the left and right corners of his eyes. The two looked at Kiritani Sento in disbelief. After all, the biggest change that the rabbit brought to the two was that there was a ghost-like pattern on his right face. Kiritani Sento held the hilt tightly and stood between the two. If it was the third brother or Kokushibo who came today, they might not be able to fight. But today it happened that Yahoo, who was sitting at the back, came. Facing the people who opened the pattern, he might not lose. If he was lucky enough, it would be no problem to take one of them away. Yahoo stared at the few people unhappily, and he shouted loudly, "Hey, hey, hey! Master Yahoo is talking to you, are you deaf? If you praise my pot, I can consider leaving one of you alive." When it comes to the pot, Yahoo started to introduce it. The pot in his hand was black, with a row of neat and white teeth arranged under the mouth of the pot, but the pot looked like Yahoo, crooked, and it would be an insult to the word ugly to describe it. By the way, this row of white teeth is the teeth of your fellow insects. I killed 3 people to get them together. Yahoo introduced proudly, and his eyes were full of expectations. He expected the other person to praise his artwork. Doma had stood beside Yahoo without knowing when, but his empty shoulders looked a little strange. Chapter 82. Kiritani Sento took a deep breath, a silver light flashed, and Yahoo began to laugh foolishly. Because in his eyes, several people have begun to praise his pot power. However, in reality, Kyojuro had already chopped his pot into pieces with a knife. If Doma hadn't kicked Yahoo's head in time, he would have been beheaded. Doma summoned 10 crystal children to act as a protective umbrella, and the huge water lily bodhisattva was reborn in the flames, but its height was half of the original height. Doma has consumed too much, and it is amazing enough to summon a second water lily bodhisattva. Yahoo knocked on the newly grown head and looked at Doma with a puzzled look. He asked, "Mr. Doma, they have surrendered, ha ha ha." Doma stared at Yahoo with the eyes of a mentally retarded person. He suspected that this guy was an undercover sent by the opposite side, and he was sending his head. "You idiot, be careful of the silver-haired swordsman's eyes, there is an illusion," Doma said calmly. With just one look, he saw the specialness of Kiritani Battle Rabbit. Yahoo then noticed that the pot in his hand was gone, and his originally pale body instantly turned red, and 2 angry hot air came out of his ears, just like a steam train. "You, these damn bugs, are my works of art. I will kill you." Breaking Yahoo's pot is no less than using 1,000 arrows to pierce his heart. Yahoo performed the blood demon art, octopus pot hell. A pot covered with white dots was thrown down, and in a flash, a giant octopus the size of a house came out of the small bottle mouth. "Smash those damn swordsmen to death!" Yahoo jumped and roared, looking like he would never give up. Doma raised his mouth and silently sat behind Yahoo, while controlling the water lily bodhisattva to raise his razor-like hand knife. The eldest brother and Jiyu used their strongest sword skills, while Kiritani Sento went around behind the water lily bodhisattva. The 3 of them were already exhausted, and the stripes consumed too much, especially Kiritani Sento who had just performed an illusion. Originally, he thought of using a sneak attack to kill Yahoo, but who knew that Doma would actually intervene. The tentacles of the giant octopus kept whipping Kyojuro and Tomioka Jiyu like steel whips, and soon the ground became bumpy. "Ah!" The eldest brother roared and swung the knife in his hand, and the burning blade wind instantly tore the octopus tentacles in front of him. Tomioka Jiyu jumped up with the help of the elastic octopus tentacles, and the 8th form of Takitsubo was activated, and the blue water flow fell from the sky. The loud octopus was instantly split into 2, but the next second, Jiyu was hit by Doma's hand knife, and his blood instantly dyed half of his fist red. At this moment, Kiritani Sento jumped on the head of the water lily bodhisattva, and swung out the 5 types, wind, fire, water, and sky, and the entire water lily bodhisattva was dyed red. "Damn, this dead white-haired man!" Doma and Yahoo released the blood demon technique at the same time, and Yahoo had a pot with water grass patterns in his hand, and countless goldfish gushed out. The goldfish were like pea shooters, constantly spitting out poison needles from their mouths. Doma's ice lotus surrounded the poisonous goldfish, and the goldfish and ice lotus that had just approached Kiritani Sento were instantly evaporated. Even so, there were still fish that slipped through the net. Kiritani Sento's team uniform was completely corroded, and his tight muscles were exposed. Doma gasped for breath, and he immediately retreated behind Yahoo. After all, he didn't even have the strength to grow his arms now. Yahoo rushed forward like crazy. He wanted to use his own advantages to rush into the defense of Kiritani Sento. "Ah!" Veins popped up on Kiritani Sento's forehead, and Tornado also strengthened a bit. He looked at the watch. There was only half an hour left before dawn. If he could only hold these 2 guys back, they would all die. Yahoo felt like he had rushed into a juicer. His arm was like a piece of sugar cane, constantly being crushed by the sword wind but also constantly growing. Doma seemed to have noticed something, turned around and was about to jump off the water lily bodhisattva, but Tomioka Jiyu suddenly jumped up. Tomioka Jiyu said nothing, and nailed Doma to the water lily bodhisattva with his seriously injured body. Jiyu's lips were purple. If it weren't for the markings, he would have been frozen into an ice sculpture. In fact, he had been holding the fist of the water lily bodhisattva tightly, and at the same time, he just happened to use that fist to hide his body. How is it possible? I saw you fly out with my own eyes. Doma looked incredulous. Suddenly Doma realized that it was that damned silver-haired swordsman, and it was an illusion again, damn it. But Doma laughed the next second, and a crystal princess suddenly appeared behind Tomioka Jiyu, the ice fan flashing with cold light slid towards Tomioka Jiyu's fragile neck at high speed. Doma whispered sarcastically, "You will die." Tomioka Jiyu didn't care and continued to suppress Doma tightly. He believed in his teammates. At this critical moment, the eldest brother rushed to the water lily bodhisattva, and the ice child gently scratched the back of Tomioka Jiyu's neck, leaving a shallow blood mark. Kyojuro immediately cut off Doma's legs, and he completely lost his limbs. Seeing this, Kiritani Sento started to curse, "Yahoo, your pot is simply worthless garbage. Dogs shake their heads when they see it, and Musen sighs when they see it. You dare to be an artist with this? And I broke your ugly pot. Oh. By the way, I also broke the first pot you gave to Doma, and I peed in it." Kiritani Sento's tone was not only sarcastic, but also made people want to hit him. Yahoo felt like he was going to explode. If he didn't kill this dead white-haired man today, he was not worthy of being in upper rank. He cursed my pot and Musen-sama. Damn it! Damn it! I want you to die without a burial place. Seeing that Yahoo was overwhelmed by anger, Kiritani Sento directly used the breathing of the I-second form wind rock body. By waving the two swords in his hands quickly, countless tiny wind blades were spread all over the place close to Kiritani Sento's skin, and his body was even covered with a layer of earthy yellow fighting spirit. Yahoo found that the barrier disappeared, so he naturally went all out and turned directly into a molting state, which was the final form after escaping from the pot, with webbed palms and a snake-like lower body. The whole body is covered with fine scales that are harder than diamonds, but the body is very soft, and it has a god's hand that can turn everything touched by the fist into fish. Yahoo rotated himself at a high speed, and a spiral airflow was generated, which quickly decomposed Kiritani Sento's defense. Kiritani Sento held the two swords horizontally in front of him to block the impact released by Yahoo. However, the next second, the swords in Kiritani Sento's hands turned into two large goldfish, and Yahoo's palms went directly through Kiritani Sento's chest. Chapter 83. Kiritani Sento threw away the two swords in his hands and grabbed Yahoo's arms tightly, fearing that Yahoo would run away suddenly. A big question mark appeared on Yahoo's head. Is this guy mentally ill? What the hell is he laughing about? The long silver hair swayed in the wind, and the bright red color cut through the sky with the rising sun. The dawn light before dawn was like a sharp arrow, piercing Yahoo's body bit by bit. At this moment, he finally knew why the swordsman laughed so proudly. The anger just now shattered his reason, and he completely ignored time. Yahoo was anxious, and he pushed Kiritani Sento away with a roar. He ran towards the shadow of the ruins like a mad dog. Kiritani Sento fell from the sky little by little, blood kept oozing out of his chest, and he gradually lost consciousness. Facing two upper rank at the same time, everyone has done their best. It doesn't matter whether they will die or not. Just do your best and leave it to fate. Cough cough cough. Kiritani Sento coughed weakly. But Kiritani Sento's scarlet eyes stared at the wailing Yahoo, and the overwhelming fish formed a parasol on Yahoo. Yahoo's body was covered with white smoke and red spots left by the burning. Damn it, damn it! Damn silver-haired swordsman, why does the sun exist in the world? Yahoo completely burned, and the flames burned every cell in his body. On the other hand, Doma's side, the water lily bodhisattva had long disappeared, and he was nailed there by Tomioka Jiyu, and his body was burned by the sun. Just when the two ghosts were desperate, a strange pipa sound resounded throughout the mansion, and Doma and Yahoo, who were still burning, disappeared in front of everyone. Tomioka Jiyu stared blankly at the cracked ground, his face livid. What happened? Gone, where did the ghost go? But he couldn't hold on any longer and fell in the warm sunshine. Kyojuro trembled as he walked towards Kiritani Sento. He saw with his own eyes that the rabbit was pierced through the chest. If the rabbit died, he would never forgive himself for the rest of his life. Kiritani Sento was completely numb. Damn it. Damn scumbag boss, didn't he agree to squeeze employees to death? Why did Naruto take action? This is unscientific and doesn't fit the character of the scumbag boss. Where is the ghost pillar? Is this still the scumbag boss of the lower string elimination plan? Kiritani Sento lay on the ground in a big letter shape, with a bitter smile on his lips. He raised his right hand tremblingly, and a silver ball of light covered the big hole in his chest. Kiritani Sento's flesh and blood was wriggling a little bit. Although he was not recovering as fast as a ghost, he was still recovering. He didn't want to die before he could accomplish his mission. Kyojuro used up his last bit of strength to come to Kiritani Sento. Kiritani Sento turned his head and sighed. But he laughed immediately. After all, it was not easy for everyone. Brother, I can't die. Have you forgotten my healing skills? Kyojuro breathed a sigh of relief and fell directly beside Kiritani Sento. The spots at the corners of his eyes gradually faded, and the originally thumping heartbeat returned to normal. He whispered to comfort, "Rabbit, don't worry, learn from experience. At least, we broke the situation that has not changed for hundreds of years. Yes, there will be a second time after the first time, and then countless times." As a natural optimist, Kyojuro was not discouraged by this difficulty. Because the sun was out, all the blood demon arts were lifted, and Kiritani Sento's Pisces turned back into a sword, but he didn't even have the strength to stand up. About an hour later, the loud crow's cry broke the quiet atmosphere. The members of the hidden cult quickly ran into the territory of the Eternal Paradise cult. They were in groups of 2, carrying a stretcher to Kiritani Sento and others. Kiritani Sento sat up with his last bit of strength, and what came into view was Kaoru running to Tomioka Gyuu in a hurry. "Mr. Gyuu, are you okay?" Tomioka Gyuu didn't say anything. Kiritani Kaoru put his finger on Gyuu's philtrum and was relieved to find that he was still breathing. "Damn Gyuu, that's my sister." Kiritani Sento fainted because of excessive physical exhaustion. Inu, who was in charge of Kiritani Sento, shouted, "Hurry, hurry, Hitomi has fainted. Lord Kaoru, he has fainted." When Kaoru heard that her brother had fainted, tears immediately welled up in her eyes. She quickly came to Kiritani Sento and used her healing skills. Unexpectedly, Kiritani Sento suddenly opened his eyes, which scared Kiritani Sento. Kiritani Sento teased weakly, "You have a man and you forgot that I am a little girl." Finding that her brother was fine, Kaoru Kiritani burst into tears of joy, blushing and saying, "Brother, you scared me to death. This joke is not funny at all." Kiritani Sento nodded, raised his hand and gently touched Kaoru Kiritani's little head. "Your brother, did I miscalculate? I didn't kill any upper rank." Kiritani Kaoru tightly held her brother's trembling hand, her smile was like the sun in the sky, she imitated her brother and patted his head, saying softly, "Brother, you are the best, whether it's you or big brother Kyojuro, Mr. Gyuu, Mr. Fuzugawa or brother Obanai. Everyone is waiting for you to come home." 2 lines of tears flowed down Kiritani-sun's fair cheeks. She had been worried about her brother and Mr. Yeong, and now she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. There was a wooden building hidden in the bottomless underground. The blood-stained mahogany was arranged in a disorderly manner. There was no ceiling or floor here. The whole building was like an intricate maze. Because all the rooms have their own arrangement, 4 winding vermilion corridors converged to one point. It was a small platform of more than 10 square meters, there was no support under the platform, but it was floating steadily in the air. Doma and Yahu, who had been burned to charcoal by the sun, lay quietly on the small platform, like dehydrated fish. Following Doma's gaze, a woman with grey skin was sitting on a smaller platform. The woman held the zither with her left hand and a plectrum made of human bones in her right hand. Her long black bangs hung down from her side face, and her strange single eye was looming in her hair. Doma smiled and said, "I'm saved, I'm finally saved. Thank you, Mingnu." Mingnu said nothing, but gently plucked the blood-colored strings, and then the entire underground castle began to rotate. However, no matter how the surrounding buildings changed, Mingnu's place was the only one that remained motionless, and where she was the center. Suddenly, the grainy sound of the pipa sounded again, and Doma and Yahu were also buried in the shadow. Chapter 84. The woman's left eye was engraved with upper string and her right eye was engraved with lock, which was upper string lock, Dakame. When Dakame was still a human, Doma, who was still upper string lock, gave her his blood and saved her life. Therefore, Dakame regarded Doma as a benefactor and the ghost she respected most besides the scum boss. In the darkest corner of the platform, a weak voice sounded, and the owner of the voice seemed very scared. He slowly said, "How long have we not seen each other? It should be more than 100 years. I didn't expect such a thing to happen just after meeting, hey." It was upper string lock, Han Tengu, who spoke. There were no numbers in the eyes of Han Tengu hiding in the corner, only a pair of pupils as blank as paper. His forehead was swollen, like a swollen-headed dragon, and there were 2 small horns extending from his forehead. His face was like an old man like Pruchna, and he could be said to be the oldest ghost among the upper ranks. "You were beaten like this by the pillar, you are so weak, Doma." Akaza, who always hated the weak, sneered, and his frown showed his extreme disgust for Doma. Doma always treated Akaza with a cold shoulder, and he always regarded Akaza as a friend, but Akaza hated Doma who only ate women, and for him, that was the behavior of a weak person. Doma pretended to be very sad and complained, "Mr. Akaza, I'm so sad." During the conversation, Doma's limbs had grown back. He gently patted Daki's head and said with a gentle smile, "I'm fine, Daki." Daki held her chin with both hands, and instantly became shy, with a blush on her fair cheeks. "Ah! Mr. Doma touched my head, it's good." But the next second, Doma instantly came to Akaza and hugged his shoulders. With a buzzing sound, Akaza's fist even made a sonic boom, but such a punch was only to blow up Doma's head. Akaza pushed Doma away and said coldly, "Stay away from me." Doma's head returned to his neck at a speed visible to the naked eye. He stretched his stiff neck and complained with a smile, "Akaza, you are still so unromantic." Akaza has always adhered to the principle of never quarreling when fighting, and punched Doma again. A crescent-shaped blade flashed by, and Akaza's arm that hit Doma fell to the ground. The lower-ranked upper ranks such as Daki didn't even see the speed of the other party's sword. Even Doma and Akaza only saw a bright and cold flash. "Akaza, if you are dissatisfied, you can ask for a bloody battle in exchange. Doma is your superior." Kokushibo's calm voice sounded, and his hand was still holding the scar. Kokushibo was wearing a kimono with purple snake patterns and black spots and a black horse hakama. He had a long crimson ponytail that looked like his younger brother. The red stripes were like a canyon, stretching across his left forehead and the right side of his neck. 6 blood-red eyes almost occupied most of Kokushibo's face, and his golden pupils shone brightly, giving people a sense of majesty without anger. In the irises of his left and right eyes, the upper rank and one were engraved, symbolizing his status. The other upper ranks were so scared that they dared not breathe. Kokushibo left a very mysterious impression on them, because he rarely took action. He was the first to become an upper rank and the eldest brother of all the upper ranks. The ghosts only knew that this eldest brother was very strict about the level. He did not like any behavior that crossed the level. Akaza's arm was a warning. Akaza, who was always strong, showed a submissive look. He slowly said, "I know." Doma silently put away the gesture that he was about to praise Kokushibo, otherwise he would be the next one to be chopped. "My lords, that person is coming." Naruto, who had been kneeling beside him, spoke. Her face was as calm as water, as if the upper strings who had always been loving each other had nothing to do with her. Maybe she was used to it. After all, blowing up a head, breaking an arm, breaking a leg, etc. were all part of the company culture of the scum boss. If you haven't been beaten by a colleague, you'd be embarrassed to say that you work for a scum boss. Compared with the warm atmosphere of the Demon Slayer Corps, the scum boss's side seems particularly kind. Naruto gently plucked the strings, and a black platform appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. The platform was higher than the height of each demon. All the upper strings immediately half knelt down, only Kokushibo bowed slightly. Compared with other upper strings, Kokushibo and Muzan relationship were more cooperative. All the upper strings dared not look up, after all, the air was filled with gunpowder smoke. On the platform stood a young man in a white suit, with short black hair that fluttered without wind. He was tall, pale as paper, and had red eyes. This was the real owner of the Infinite City, the ancestor of all demons, and the ultimate target of the Demon Slayer Corps, Muzan Kibutsuji. Because of his excessive exploitation of employees, he was also nicknamed the Scum Boss. He was 100 million times more selfish than the Crab's boss of the Krusty Krab. Muzan's cold vertical pupils swept around, and the entire Infinite City shook, which could be described as an earthquake. Not to mention that the atmosphere dared not kick, all the upper strings directly chose to give up breathing and stayed in place like statues. In this way, the air in the Infinite City has been solidified. The scum boss didn't speak, and whoever opened his mouth would die. Doma. Yahoo! Muzin's voice sounded, like two bullets just fired, and the powerful kinetic energy locked Doma and Yahoo. Yahoo knelt down directly, his head almost growing into the floor, and he stammered, "Sir. I was wrong, I deserve to die, please calm down." Doma remained the same, smiling, "My beloved sir, I'm here. What do you want?" Muzin gently waved his right hand, and the powerful force directly stirred up an air blade, which gracefully crossed Doma's neck. Faced with this fierce attack, Doma didn't dare to move at all. Because he was born without emotions, Doma didn't have any respect for his boss. It was more of a fear brought to him by Muzin's cells, which was engraved in his bones. Muzin roared, his harsh voice almost piercing the infinite castle. He was already very unhappy with Doma, but now he was in need of workers, otherwise these two would have died in the sun. As Doma's head rolled under the black platform, the recognition meeting for the employees of the evil ghosts was also unveiled. Chapter 85. The Demon Slayer Corps still exists. The blue Higanbana has not been found. Waste, just a bunch of waste. Muzin became more and more angry. From the moment he sensed that Doma and Yahoo were going to die, he was already furious. The dignified upper rank was forced to the brink of death by the tiny human. For a moment, Muzin wanted to reshuffle the entire 12 demon months. But after thinking carefully, there were too many things to do. Without this group of people, no one would do the work. "My lord," a silver-haired swordsman appeared in the Demon Slayer Corps. His eyes can emit abilities similar to blood demon arts. "It's annoying." Boom! Doma's head turned into layers of blood mist, and a powerful impact pierced through the floor, and invisible ripples were rippling in the air. The next second, Doma's head returned to his neck with a smile, and he said with a smile, "Thank you for your care. It doesn't matter to Doma if his head is crushed. I really want the adults to hold my head, what should I do, why don't the adults do it to me?" Yahoo, who buried his head in the floor, was just thinking about it, he also wanted to get the boss's special care. For such a perverted request, it can only be said that if you are not from the same family, you will not enter the same door. Suddenly, a black and thin whip with blood vessels popped out from behind Muzin, and the outside of the whip was covered with white thin bones, like armor. The big root of the spikes attached to the whip, as if it would kill anyone who touched it. The whip passed at lightning speed, and Yahoo finally realized his wish. Muzin held Yahoo's head and wished to kill this guy immediately. But Yahoo showed a perverted smile, and he said with a smile, "Thank you for your concern." Yahoo is a die-hard fan of Muzin, even more than his obsession with art. He. The adults are finally going to teach me a lesson, I'm so happy. Such perverted remarks are purely basic operations. Muzin inserted the pipe whip into Yahoo's head, and at the same time inserted another into Doma's mind. He was very curious. After hundreds of years, he wanted to know what kind of person was enough to force two upper strings into a desperate situation. Muzin didn't want another Tsugakoko Yoriichi to appear, even though in his eyes that kind of existence would never appear again, but he had to wait until the fire started to extinguish the flames. Doma closed his eyes, and the memories in Doma and Yahoo's minds entered Muzin's brain like a movie. In the picture, a silver-haired boy tightly grasped the double swords in his hands. He had a confident smile, and it seemed that everything was under control. Muzin showed a look of disdain, confident, "Everything is under control? Silver-haired swordsman, nothing is in your prediction." Doma and Gamatsubo, these two idiots are still alive, hey. Muzin breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe he is really a genius, but he has killed countless genius swordsmen over the past 1,000 years. Maybe it is because Jiguo Yuichi has forced him to a dead end, so far no one can shake his position in Muzin's heart. Muzin Kibutsuji may be the ancestor of the demons who are high above, but he is actually a cruel and cold-blooded coward in his bones, otherwise he would not have been hiding until Yuichi died before daring to come out. He has the strength to destroy the entire Demon Slayer Corps but has been hiding in the dark as the sixth, and even strictly restrained his subordinates from being too conspicuous. Too scared, afraid that the Demon Slayer Corps will find him, afraid that Yuichi's successors will break his wish for immortality. The knife marks left by Jiguo Yuichi still make Muzin feel the burning sensation. Muzin's face suddenly froze. The scene in his eyes was exactly the spotted Kiritani Sento performing 3 breathing methods. The silver high ponytail swayed in the wind. At this moment, he was not Tsukuni Yuichi but also him. What was going on? This is impossible. This is impossible. Tsukuni Yuichi. He has been dead for hundreds of years. No. Muzan hurriedly put away the whip and threw Yahu's head aside like throwing garbage. Muzan's gloomy voice echoed throughout the infinite city, like the dark clouds covering the sky, making people feel heavy. Silver-haired swordsman. If you see him, you must kill him no matter what means you use. Destroy his eyes. All the upper strings answered neatly, yes. Muzan's voice spread farther and farther. Through the unique connection with all the ghosts, his orders were like an unchangeable program, implanted in the minds of every ghost. From this moment on, all ghosts have an additional instruction in their genes to kill Silver Swordsman. Kiritani Sento is not Tsugakoko Yoriichi, but Muzan saw a sign. He judged with thousands of years of experience that he must kill him. A plan against the Demon Slayer Corps quietly took shape in Muzan's mind. Before the upper rank incident, he didn't even bother to care about the Demon Slayer Corps, because Muzan thought that any upper rank was enough to deal with the Demon Slayer Corps. Muzan returned from his contemplation, his face still as cold as ice and disdainful of everything in the world. Get out! You bunch of trash, hurry up and find the blue spider lily, that's the first priority. Get out! The crisp pipa sound rang again, and the upper ranks disappeared in the infinite castle amid Muzan's abuse. Only Kokushibo stood there, and Muzan looked up at him. Kokushibo was as calm as a venomous snake. He slowly said, all traces of the sun breathing have probably disappeared. I will pay attention to the silver-haired guy. Muzan nodded with satisfaction. After all, Kokushibo was his first right-hand man and did a good job. However, Muzan still planned to let Kokushibo take a look at the silver-haired swordsman. As the whip was inserted, a flash of surprise flashed in Kokushibo's eyes. He had lived for hundreds of years and had never heard of a swordsman who could coordinate 3 breathing methods at the same time. As a swordsman, Kokushibo could understand what this meant. The surprise was fleeting. Kokushibo's tone was full of appreciation. His talent may not be as good as Tsugakoko Yoshiichi, but he is definitely the first person besides him in hundreds of years. I will deal with him if I have a chance. Kokushibo survived in the world just to pursue the highest realm of kendo, or in other words, a kind of obsession. He wanted to surpass the person who could no longer be surpassed. Now, Kokushibo saw a glimmer of hope again. Kokushibo's 6 eyes stared at the empty infinite castle, and he murmured, is there finally a decent opponent? With the sound of a pipa, the upper string 1 and the first demon disappeared together. Chapter 86. The morning of the Demon Slayer Corps was as usual, with a sense of tranquility amidst the hustle and bustle, and members of the team who were carrying out their missions came and went. In the special ward of the Butterfly House, Kiritani and the other 5 were lying on the tatami in all directions, and they were all very tired. Kiritani, who was still asleep, opened his arms, but he was hugging Iguro Obanai beside him. Obanai, who was always alert, suddenly woke up, and was stunned by the scene in front of him. Kiritani was already face to face with him, with only an inch of distance between them. Damn, what the hell? Shinobu, hug me. Kiritani said with a silly smile, and at the same time opened his arms to hug Obanai. Hey! Shinobu, why did you grow taller? You perverted rabbit, you deserve to die. Why are you hugging me? This is so corny, damn. Iguro Obanai punched out, and Kiritani Sento flew out. With a bang, he came into close contact with the wall. What's wrong, is there a ghost? Kyojuro suddenly sat up, and it seemed that the sequelae of the battle with Doma and Gamatsubo were still there. Kyojuro took a look at the rabbit sliding down the wall, and took a long breath. He slowly said, it turned out to be a rabbit. But the next second he realized that something was wrong. Why did the rabbit sleep on the wall? Kyojuro glanced at Obanai, turned his head to the side, and said calmly, what does it have to do with me? Kyojuro scratched the back of his head with a puzzled look and asked, Obanai, why is your face red? Iguro Obanai stammered, but, it may be the sequelae of the stripes. The noisy sound also woke up Tomioka Jiyu and Fushigawamiya, Miya, who were sleeping very quietly. Kiritani Sento opened his sleepy eyes and asked incoherently, where's my ninja? Iguro Obanai glared at Kiritani Sento and scolded unhappily, slutty rabbit, you really deserve a beating. Kiritani Sento stared at Obanai with disdain and retorted, stinky snake, why do you have nothing to do but scold me? Iguro Obanai spread his hands and complained, I just want to scold you, what's wrong with it? Kiritani Sento came to Iguro Obanai at the speed of light and said angrily, do you want to fight, kid? Iguro Obanai pressed Kiritani Sento's forehead and said with a ferocious face, who is afraid of who? Kyojuro hugged the two of them and said with a laugh, oh. We are friends for life and death, calm down. Just then, the door of the ward opened, and Koko Shinobu and others brought breakfast. Kaoru looked at everyone and said, I feel relieved to see everyone so energetic. Kaoru and Kane brought breakfast to Kyojuro and the others in turn. Shinobu Koko rolled her eyes at Sento Kiritani and looked a little angry. Sento Kiritani also noticed Shinobu Koko's strangeness, but what he cared about most was that Shinobu had light makeup around her eyes. With Shinobu's personality, she would never wear makeup or anything like that. However, the rumbling stomach quickly diverted the rabbit's attention. After all, Shinobu was also a girl, and it was normal for her to wear makeup. Hey! Where's my meal? Sento Kiritani looked at everyone blankly. He was starving to death. Fighting with Doma consumed too much physical strength. Sento Kiritani felt that he could swallow a cow now. Brother, you are special. Kaoru Kiritani approached his brother. Special. As soon as Sento Kiritani finished speaking, several members of the hidden team came in carrying a large wooden tray. There were countless rice balls on the wooden board, more than 200 by eye, and the appetite was comparable to that of a legendary pillar. Kyojuro and his friends who were eating were not surprised, and the scene of the rabbit eating half a pig was still fresh in their memory. The members of the team of Yin put down the big plate with rice balls, and then bowed deeply to the few people. The news of the Eternal Paradise cult had already spread to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, and the battle between the two upper strings was particularly exciting. Although they failed, they made history. After all, they were demons that only existed in legends. Kiritani Zanto almost ate a rice ball in 2 bites. In terms of eating, Kiritani Zanto was second to none. Kaoru Kiritani sighed as she looked at her brother who only knew how to eat. She leaned into Kiritani Sento's ear and whispered, Brother, find some time to comfort Sister Shinobu. Knowing that you were shot through the chest by the upper rank, Sister Shinobu cried until you woke up. She stayed by your side for a week to take care of you. You stupid brother. Silly brother. Kiritani Sento raised his head suddenly, and the rice ball in his hand suddenly didn't smell good anymore, but he found that Koko Shinobu was gone, and he finally knew why did Shinobu put on makeup? Because her eyes were red from crying. I know, but I have more important things to do. Don't worry, I'll confess to Shinobu after I get it done. Hearing her brother's words, Kaoru's eyes narrowed into a slit, and the fire of gossip was burning. Brother, come on. Sister-in-law depends on you. Kaoru gently patted her brother's shoulder, looking like a little adult, so cute. After dinner, Kiritani Sento sat quietly on the tatami, the crescent moon eye activated, and the silver healing light covered his chest. The most important thing Kiritani Sento said was to deal with the sequelae of the stripes. It is said that swordsmen who activate the stripes will not live beyond the age of 25. But he wanted to try whether the healing technique of the crescent moon eye is effective. Kiritani Sento closed his eyes, and the endless darkness enveloped Kiritani Sento. A thin silver line extended infinitely in the darkness. He could see the tail of the thin line but could not see the end. But he clearly felt that the silver thread carried a leaping force, which was the breath of life. However, the thread was now like a candle in the wind, swaying. The most important thing was that a ball of black flame was burning at the end of the silver thread. The black flame was like a pest in the tree, constantly eroding the vitality of the tree. The silver ball of light in Kiritani Sento's hand turned into a fire extinguisher at some point. He gently pressed the handle of the fire extinguisher, and the silver water flow kept washing the flame. After a while, the black flame went out. The moment the flame went out, the black space in the positive film lit up, dazzling like the Milky Way. The long silver line was so dazzling that Kiritani Sento felt full of strength in his body. It felt like a rebirth. It seemed that this should eliminate the sequelae of the stripes. Rabbit, rabbit. Are you okay? Why are you sweating so much? Kyojuro asked softly. The rabbit said that the stripes have sequelae, but the process of removing the sequelae is too difficult. It has only been a short while, and the rabbit is already sweating profusely. Kiritani Zanto suddenly opened his eyes and hugged the bewildered Tomioka Jiyu and the other 4. He shouted excitedly, Great, the sequelae of the stripes can be solved, and no one will die. The rest of the people were full of question marks. Can the stripes kill people? Chapter 87. Rabbit whispered, Big brother, just close your eyes. Kyojuro had no choice but to do as he was told when he saw Kiritani Sento so serious. In the Big Brother's world, a long red line stretched across the endless void. Except for the different colors, everything was exactly the same as Kiritani Sento. Black flames raged at the end of the long red line. Kiritani Sento picked up the rabbit brand fire extinguisher and fired at the black flames. After a fierce operation, the black flames were completely extinguished, and the long line symbolizing the Big Brother's life ignited an orange-red flame, and the void also turned into a world as blazing as flames. Kiritani Sento lifted the healing spell, glanced at the Big Brother, and his complexion recovered a lot. It seemed that the problem was solved. Kyojuro jumped on the spot, feeling relaxed. Then it's Gyuhu next. Gyuhu Tomioka's lifeline is as blue as the sea, giving people a particularly calm feeling. After solving the lifeline of Gyuhu, Kiritani Sento's body began to shake slightly. But he pretended to be fine and cured Fuzugawa Shia. After treating Shia, Kiritani Sento sat down against the wall, because his back was soaked with sweat and he didn't want them to see it. Otherwise, with Iguro Obanai's temper, he would never accept the treatment. Iguro Obanai seemed to have seen something, and he took advantage of Kiritani Sento's inattention and directly stretched his hand to Kiritani Sento's back. Slutty rabbit, you! Obanai stared at Kiritani Sento with a frown. Let's talk about my treatment later. Without any hesitation, Obanai walked towards the door. His tone was a little cold, because he was a little angry, and he was angry that Kiritani Sento didn't take care of his body. Kiritani Sento held Obanai's wrist and didn't let him go. Little snake, believe me, it just consumes more energy. If I don't treat it, I will feel guilty for the rest of my life. Obanai was silent for a while, turned around silently, and a trace of imperceptible worry flashed in his eyes. He sighed and said, hurry up and treat it. The damaged mind will affect your strength. Hee. Kiritani Sento nodded with satisfaction and started the healing technique at the same time. After unremitting efforts, Kiritani Sento finally solved all the problems with human stripes. He leaned against the corner of the wall and breathed in the air. His hands trembled slightly, but his heart was infinitely happy. With this experiment, it is proved that everyone in the Demon Slayer Corps can enjoy their old age instead of dying young. Kyojuro and others sat around Kiritani Sento, and it can be said that he was surrounded by water. Several people stared at him, as if they were afraid that something would happen to him. The atmosphere became strange for a while, just like four cats surrounding a small dried fish. Kiritani Sento gave a bitter smile and leaned against the wall with a comfortable look on his face. He teased, I know I'm handsome, but you guys shouldn't be so hungry. I'll be shy. Obana held the wall with one hand and started to vomit. He said with great disgust, don't disgust me, I'm going to vomit my breakfast. Jiu nodded calmly, I agree with Obana on this point. Ha ha ha. Kiritani Sento, I'm quite tired, is this okay for you? Damn it. Kiritani Sento used a trick of the evil rabbit to pounce on the four people and threw them to the ground. Obana and the other four lay quietly on the tatami, with Kiritani Sento's arms on each of them, like a bridge between two mountains. Kiritani Sento smiled very happily, and whispered, it's great to have you brothers, thank you. Can you please stop being so cheesy? I know, we are friends for life and death, and we are all good brothers. Yet. Just then, the door of the ward suddenly opened. Kiritani Sento sat up with a somersault, and he was a little surprised, because it was Yubayashiki Yoshiya who came to visit the patient. The other four were very surprised, and they all half knelt down. My lord! My lord, why are you here? Oh my, boss, your health is very important. Because of the curse, Yubayashiki Yoshiya's forehead was covered with purple and fine blood vessels. It's just that the hair blocked it and it was completely invisible. Yubayashiki Yoya had a gentle smile on his face. He waved his hand indifferently and replied, it's okay. I've always wanted to come and see you. You've really worked hard on the matter of the Eternal Paradise cult. Kawashiki Yoya bowed deeply. It was a blessing for the Demon Slayer Corps to have them. Kiritani Sento hurriedly took out a futon and placed it in front of Kobayashiki Yoya. He hugged him and said with a smile, boss, we are all family. You are too kind. Kobayashiki Yoya sat directly on the futon and said with a smile, let's not talk about business today. Let's relax and be like rabbits. Because of the special existence of Kiritani Sento, Kobayashiki Yoya has a little more youthful atmosphere belonging to his age in addition to the calmness engraved in his bones. Kobayashiki Yoya in this state is more like a real person. After all, the Demon Slayer Corps only had a few pillars a few years ago, and his burden was too heavy. But not everyone can be as thick-skinned as the perverted rabbit. Open Eye still performs steadily, like a daily venomous snake. Stinky snake, you. Even in front of Kobayashiki Kaya, Kiritani Sento still does not shy away at all. This pair of funny people's daily life has brought a lot of laughter to everyone. The 6 people chatted with each other, like close friends. It is rare to have a confidant in life, and it is difficult to find a soulmate in the ages. It is such a blessing to have so many close friends. Click. The sliding door suddenly opened, and the scene in the ward scared her. She didn't expect that the Lord was there. Lord, you are here too. Kobayashiki Kaya stopped Koko Shinobu who was about to salute, and a smile of I understand suddenly appeared. It's Shinobu, Rabbit is there. The next second, Kobayashiki Kaya personally pushed Kiritani Sento and Koko Shinobu out of the ward. Rabbit, Shinobu, come on, both of you. Lord, I have a son. Kobayashiki Kaya gently patted Kiritani Sento's shoulder with a smile that said I understand everything. Kiritani Sento took a deep breath and was ready to apologize to Shinobu. After all, he made her worried. However, Kiritani Sento and Shinobu Koko looked up at each other almost at the same time. After confirming their eyes, they knew it was the right person. For some reason, their cheeks seemed to be synchronized and turned red. Chapter 88. Kiritani Sento apologized directly, without saying anything, just admitting his mistakes first. I'm sorry to have worried you, but the point is that I'm still alive, right? He. Looking at Kiritani Sento's silly look, Shinobu Koko covered her mouth and laughed. Rabbit, do you want to go out for a walk? Kiritani Sento said without hesitation, of course, facing the invitation of a beautiful woman, there is no reason to refuse. Then wait for me at the door of the butterfly house. Kiritani Sento ran to the door of the butterfly house with a smile, and the passing team members were dumbfounded. What happened to Master Tongzu? After a while, a beautiful figure appeared in Kiritani Sento's eyes. The soft summer breeze brought up the girl's shyness, and a shallow smile was better than 1,000 words. The light purple bow tie fluttered on the white sailor suit, and the black short skirt just covered the knees, and Shinobu Koko's curvy figure was visible at a glance. The white stockings just blended into the flawless white thighs. A warm breeze with the scent of wisteria blew over Shinobu Koko's high ponytail, and all the smiles and tenderness hit Kiritani's legs. It's so beautiful. Kiritani Sento directly gave a thumbs up to the tailor. He asked Maida to make this sailor suit, but Shinobu Koko never wore it because she couldn't accept such an open style. Shinobu Koko bent slightly. She wanted the short skirt to cover her entire legs, but it was too far-fetched. Shinobu Koko regretted it now. She put it on in a rush. This dress is too revealing. Rabbit, stop staring at me. Kiritani Sento kept waving his index finger and said with a smile, no, looking at beautiful women determines longevity. Today I'll look at you for 100 years. He. Before Kiritani Sento could react, Shinobu Koko pulled him away. There was a cloud of dust, and the two disappeared. What was that thing that just ran over? I don't know, maybe someone was practicing speed. The passing team members turned their heads in confusion. Shinobu Koko stopped when she felt that there was no one else around her, and Kiritani Battle Rabbit was still messy in the wind. When he looked up, he found that in front of him was the hillside where he had practiced breathing techniques. He and Shinobu had spent at least a year here. Kiritani Battle Rabbit smiled slightly, turned his head and looked at Shinobu Koko, his eyes full of tenderness. Shinobu, are you going to practice or pick herbs? I remember it was called Tian Chi. Of course, this was just a joke. Shinobu Koko rolled her eyes at Kiritani Battle Rabbit, and then ran up the hillside with big strides. Kiritani Battle Rabbit chased behind and reminded him, Shinobu, don't fall. The figures of the two gradually disappeared on the steep hillside. Shortly after the two left, there was a rustling sound in the bushes at the foot of the mountain. After a while, Suzuki Haruko and Kane poked their heads out, and between them was Kaoru who mentioned that he knew the inside story. It's not good to peek. Kaoru poked her finger a little embarrassedly. Suzuki Haruko looked like she was watching the fun and said with a smile, "It's okay, we are sending blessings at a critical moment. Then let's all do it together." The voice of Yubayashiki Yoshiya suddenly appeared, scaring the three of them. Kane covered her chest, her heart almost jumped out, and she took a long time to recover. "My lord, shouldn't you rest at home?" "Ahem. I am concerned about the health of the rabbit just like them." Saying that, Yubayashiki Yoshiya pointed to the four people of Kyojuro behind him. "Hello, everyone." Kyojuro didn't expect to meet acquaintances here. The four of them really cared about Kiritani Sento's health. After all, he had just solved the problem of stripes for everyone and almost fainted. But what they didn't expect was that another event was triggered. So, the 8 melon-eating group secretly walked up the hillside, and several people followed Kiritani Sento and the others from a distance, trying to witness the miracle. Unlike a few years ago, Kiritani Sento and the others climbed up the hillside effortlessly. The two sat on the top of the mountain, quietly looking at the lush pine forest below the mountain. The cool mountain breeze blew, like a massage machine, making people feel refreshed. Shinobu Koko stared at the wave-like woods, but her mind was not on the beautiful scenery. Similarly, Kiritani Sento's mind was not on the beautiful scenery. The two turned their heads at the same time and said in unison, "I have something to say to you." Kiritani Sento and Shinobu Koko were stunned at first and then laughed out loud, just like that. "Shinobu, you go first." Shinobu Koko suddenly she became serious. She knelt in front of Kiritani Sento and put her hands on his shoulders. "Rabbit, I'm sorry, I'm too willful. You were obviously trying to kill the upper string, and you were obviously injured to save everyone. I shouldn't be angry, I'm too selfish, but I'm so scared of the day without you." Bean-sized tears slid down, and the tears washed away the light makeup around Koko Shinobu's eyes, revealing her red and swollen eye sockets. Looking at the trembling girl in front of him, the boy suddenly felt as if his heart was cut by a knife, and he was so distressed. "You idiot, Kiritani Sento! You made the beloved girl cry again. You're so stupid." Kiritani Sento kept scolding himself in his heart. He raised his hand and gently wiped away the tears around Koko Shinobu's eyes. A soft silver light ball lit up, and Koko Shinobu's red and swollen eyes returned to normal. Kiritani asked distressedly, "It must be painful, right? Shinobu is not wrong. You can be willful or selfish. No matter what, you are Shinobu, I am willing to give everything for Shinobu." Kiritani took Shinobu Koko into his arms, their hearts were beating. Shinobu Koko buried her head in Kiritani's chest. Kiritani gently patted Shinobu Koko's back, like a breeze in the mountains, not impatient, reassuring. "Shinobu can be angry, worried, and selfish. Because, Shinobu is my girl. Don't cry anymore, or your pretty face will be bruised by tears." Shinobu Koko said nothing, but her hand around Kiritani's waist tightened. Kiritani gently lifted Shinobu Koko's head, and her silver crescent eyes lit up. Kiritani Sento's voice echoed in Koko Shinobu's ears, "Shinobu, this is a gift that belongs to you." As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them hugged each other and lay on the green grass. "What?" Suzuki Haruko exclaimed. "No, how could this be possible?" Although all the spectators got the best position, they only forgot about Kiritani Sento's illusion ability. Chapter 89. Kane and Kiritani Kaoru care about their sister and brother respectively, but the people behind them have other intentions. As a person who has experienced it, Yubayashiki Yoya naturally sees through everything. The look of liking someone cannot be hidden, even Jiyu who is not good at expressing himself has the most gentle look. Yubayashiki Yoya slowly retreated to Tomioka Jiyu and Fushigawara Shimizu, and whispered, "You two, chase after someone you like when you meet them. The Demon Slayer Corps has no team rules that prohibit love." Shimizu immediately moved his eyes away from Kane. He looked at the big tree next to him and said slowly, "My lord, the scenery up here is so beautiful." Tomioka Jiyu lowered his head, looking thoughtful, and then he looked up at Kiritani Kaoru, thinking about whether to write a letter to his master. However, Tomioka Jiyu's thoughts soon drifted to Kiritani Sento. After all, he still remembered the fierce look in the rabbit's eyes, and he had only seen that look in the rabbit. In the illusion, Kiritani Sento and Koko Shinobu had no idea what was happening in the outside world. Koko Shinobu looked around the dark surroundings. She only remembered that the rabbit's eyes lit up and said that he wanted to give her a special gift. But she felt that she had been in the dark for a long time, and the rabbit was silent. At this moment, a ball of lavender light appeared in Coco Shinobu's sight. She seemed to be summoned by something and walked towards the light unconsciously. Coco Shinobu walked to the edge of the light, and a beam of stage light enveloped her. Coco Shinobu squatted down, and a bunch of lavender flowers were growing. The small oval petals looked so tender against the green leaves. Coco Shinobu gently touched the pistil, and the crystal dew passed through the flowers and leaves, and finally dripped on the ground. Countless ripples spread out from the bouquet, and in an instant, Shinobu Coco became the center of the ripples. Suddenly, the bouquet shook violently, and the lavender flowers brushed past Shinobu Coco's face. In an instant, the whole space became bright. In a dark room, a flower illuminates the room, and the lavender petals float to the invisible end. Shinobu Coco looked around, her face full of surprise and happiness. The endless flower fields were dotted with lavender, rosy and white bouquets. The sky was blue and the petals were flying like butterflies. Shinobu Coco was like a girl in a painting at this moment, and everything was born for her. Shinobu, do you know what kind of flower this is? Kiritani Battle Rabbit's voice with a smile sounded in the void. Shinobu Coco shook her head. She had indeed never seen this kind of flower. The flower stem alone was dozens of centimeters high. Ha ha ha! My girl, these flowers are violets. It symbolizes eternal beauty and love. As soon as Kiritani Zanto finished speaking, a tornado formed in front of Coco. However, this tornado did not have any destructive power, just countless petals fluttering in the wind. Purple, red, white, 3 streams of petals were injected into the tornado. In less than a minute, the entire tornado was rendered into the shape of a flower. The violet tornado moved at a high speed, and its target was Coco, who was standing there in a daze. Everything in front of her was too amazing, and Coco knew that this was impossible in the real world. Therefore, even if the tornado with the power to destroy everything blew by, Coco remained motionless. At the moment when the tornado was about to touch Coco, all the petals exploded, and Coco was submerged in the sea of violet flowers. Whether in the sky or on the ground, it was all a world of flowers. As soon as the tornado dissipated, the petals of the violet gathered together again, and soon the petals turned into the shape of a person. Kiritani Sento walked out of the flowers and took out a bunch of gentian flowers from behind. Shinobu is eternal beauty, so are you willing to accept my eternal love? In Kiritani Sento's heart, violets symbolize the purest feelings, because violets are not mixed with any impurities. Only violets can express Kiritani Sento's inner feelings. He has imagined this scene countless times. Fortunately, God gave him illusions, otherwise he would never be able to see the eternal sea of violets. May Violet bless him, Kiritani Sento silently made a wish. Shinobu Coco covered her mouth, tears could not stop flowing, but this time the tears were sweet. Yes, I agreed a long time ago. Shinobu Coco nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. It was the rabbit who gave him candied haws when they first met, and the one who accompanied him in training. The rabbit that was waiting for her, the rabbit that carried out the mission together. Swimming along the long river of memory, Shinobu Coco found that every happiness of hers was closely related to the rabbit. What was there to be willing or not? She had long been inseparable from the rabbit. Woohoo! Kiritani Sento threw the gentian flower into the sky and hugged Shinobu Coco into his arms. Kiritani Sento put his mouth next to the butterfly's ear and whispered, "There's one last one. Look over there." As soon as Kiritani Sento finished speaking, the surrounding environment turned dark. Violets lit up one by one, and the violets in the distance rose into the sky. Flower-shaped fireworks exploded, and countless sparks merged into beautiful stars. The fireworks in the sky rendered the beauty of this moment to the fullest, and also deeply imprinted the picture of this moment in Shinobu Coco's mind. The fireworks slid down the sky, and the long tail was like a meteor. The confession of Kiritani Sento was officially over. Shinobu Coco tilted her head and smiled like a blooming violet, which was pleasing to the eye. "Rabbit, thank you for coming to me." Sento Kirigaya nodded and responded with a smile, "I should thank you. If it weren't for you, my life would definitely be terrible." Then Sento Kirigaya added a little meanly, "Then, Ms. Shinobu Coco, you are already Mr. Sento Kirigaya's girlfriend, you can kiss." Shinobu Coco's cheeks were bulging, like a little squirrel eating pine cones. She stood on tiptoe, gently hugged Sento Kirigaya's waist, and said gently, "Mr. Sento Kirigaya, Ms. Shinobu Coco agrees with your request." Sento Kirigaya smiled and snapped his fingers, and the surrounding environment passed away like flowing water, and the two opened their eyes together. After all, Sento Kirigaya didn't want to be in the illusion for this specific operation, this must be real. Shinobu Koko quietly closed her eyes. She was looking forward to the rabbit that belonged to her. A breeze blew across the grass, and Kiritani Sento kissed him. The soft touch spread all over his body, like an electric shock. This is the spark of love. Chapter 90. They're kissing. Great. Suzuki Haruko jumped out. She's been supporting this couple for years, and today is the end. Kiritani Sento and Koko Shinobu sat up suddenly. They were stunned. What was going on? Koko Shinobu put her hands on her hips, her face flushed. Fortunately, Rabbit knew illusion, otherwise she would be so embarrassed. Master, you. Suzuki Haruko scratched the back of her head embarrassedly, and looked at Kiritani Sento and the others with an embarrassed face and said, Ahem. I'm just passing by today. After a simple excuse, Suzuki Haruko ran away decisively. Kiritani Sento held his forehead helplessly. He didn't expect that he would be eaten by melons one day. He pointed at the white hair sticking out of the bushes and said with a wry smile, Kaoru, your hair is showing. And Sister Hwei. Kaoru Kiritani and Kane, who were discovered, also stood up. Kaoru Kiritani said with a smile, Congratulations, congratulations, brother and sister-in-law finally achieved their goal. He. That's right, Rabbit, you should have taken action a long time ago, I can entrust Shinobu to you. As soon as Kane finished speaking, Yubayashiki Yoya and the other four stood up. Congratulations, congratulations. Oh my god, boss. Kiritani Sento was frightened and took a step back. He could imagine who would come, but it was a little unbelievable that the boss would also join in the fun. Because there were suddenly more people, Koko Shinobu's CPU was burned dry, and heat kept coming out of her hair, and her face was red as if she was cooked. Koko Shinobu was like a shy little girl, hiding her whole body behind Kiritani Sento. Kiritani Xanta said with a smile, Thank you for your blessings. Ha ha ha. Kyojuro's hearty laughter put a perfect end to this confession. Time flies, and winter is here as promised. A small town somewhere in Jingzan Mountain, Minamitama County, Tokyo Prefecture. The cold snowflakes are like sharp daggers, piercing the boy's thin clothes steadily. The boy looks only 10 years old, with long black hair and long bangs on both sides of his head. The ends of his hair are mint green, and the irises on his eyes are also mint green. It's just that the child who should have been in the care of his parents is carrying a bundle of firewood. The heavy firewood bends the boy's tender shoulders. Like other firewood sellers, his business is very bad because of the appearance of coal. The boy's figure is stretched very long by the snow curtain, as if he will disappear from this world if he is not careful. The boy's name is Tokaido Ichiro. His parents died of illness. He and his only remaining brother depend on each other for survival. The two brothers live hard in this hostile world. Hey! Ichiro is here to sell firewood again. I'll buy the remaining firewood you have. A kind-looking old man waved at Ichiro. He limped towards Ichiro and looked like he had a problem with his legs. Ichiro immediately swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. If it were someone else, he would have cursed and told him to get out. You should burn coal. The old man shook his head, took the firewood, and stuffed some money into Ichiro's pocket. Looking at the old man's limping steps, Ichiro remembered everything in his heart. Perhaps they all suffer from the misfortunes of the world, but poor people always warm each other. Just as Ichiro passed a corner, a gangster suddenly rushed out. He threw down the firewood in his hand and stared at Ichiro like a hungry wolf. Compared with the skinny Ichiro, the man was simply a giant beast. Yuichiro protected the money in his arms and stared at the other party with unfriendly eyes. Kamita, you are not dead yet. Yuichiro knew that this guy was also selling firewood like himself, but he was not as lucky as himself today. Yuichiro, your mouth is still so stinky. By the way, if you don't respect me, respect your uncle, don't ask for more, give me half, and you will get these firewood. Yuichiro's eyes widened, like an angry lion, as if he would bite off a piece of the other party's meat at any time. Kamita moved his hands and feet and threw a punch. But in Yuichiro's eyes, the opponent's speed was so slow that he easily dodged it by turning sideways, and then hit Kamita heavily with a punch. However, all of Uiro's strength was dissolved by the fat on the opponent's belly. Kamita's powerful fist hit Yuichiro's left face, and the teeth flew out with blood. Listen to me, you can suffer less. Tisk. Yuichiro looked disdainful, spit out the blood in his mouth and then went up again. Soon, Kamita, who was 6 years older than Ichiro, fell to the ground, and Ichiro fell beside him with a bruised face. Comparison of Ichiro's injuries: there are more than 3 times more people. Yoshiro struggled to stand up and spat blood at Kamita. Bah! Don't mess with me next time. Otherwise you will really die next time. Yoshiro limped to the other side of the road. The boy named Kamita was full of fear. This guy fights to his death. He is a lunatic. After walking for an unknown period of time, Yoshiro saw a cake shop. The dim light revealed warmth, which was completely different from the ice and snow world he was in. Just then, a couple passed by with a child about the same age as Yoshiro. The child was wearing a white cotton jacket and smiled like an elf in the snow. Mom, I want to eat strawberry cake. The woman touched the little boy with a doting look on her face and said softly, okay, okay. Although it is a Western tradition, it's okay as long as you like it. The boy jumped up happily and walked into the cake shop with a happy smile. Yoshiro was like a poor little mouse, hiding in a secluded corner and staring at the cake shop. He stretched out his blood-stained hand to catch a snowflake, and the biting coldness reminded him all the time that the world did not belong to him. Do you have to eat cake on your birthday? Yui Long asked himself with a puzzled look. After taking a look at the wrinkled banknotes in his hand, Yui Long walked towards the cake shop. He might not belong to that world, but Wei Lang could be a happy child. The moment Yui Long walked to the door, the couple just came out with their child. The black coarse cloth clothes were full of patches, messy hair, and malicious eyes, which scared the couple to immediately protect their child behind them. However, the two of them quickly realized that the child might not have parents, otherwise how could he be so miserable? Mom, he is so pitiful, let's buy him a piece of cake too. The little boy pulled the corner of his mother's clothes and looked at Yui Long with innocent eyes. Child, this is for you, okay? The man patted Yui Lang's shoulder gently. After all, coming to the cake shop at this time probably means that his birthday is also on this day. Thank you. I can buy it myself. Ichiro walked into the cake shop without looking back. Mom, where is his mom? The little boy's careless question was like a sharp knife, piercing the softest part of Ichiro's heart. Chapter 91. Yoshiro carefully protected the strawberry cake in his arms, even though it was only a small piece. Today is my 11th birthday, so it's okay to be extravagant. Don't you think so? Dad, Mom. Yoshiro muttered to himself in the foggy night sky. Gradually, Yoshiro's thin figure was lost in the whistling snow and wind. Through the shadow of the snow and wind, a creaking cabin can be vaguely seen, and even the white snowflakes can't cover the traces left by time. A little boy who looks like Yoshiro leans against the fence. The only difference from Yoshiro is that the boy's hair is like curved seaweed. The frosted eyebrows and red cheeks tell the boy's worry about his brother. Finally, Ichiro passed through the snow and returned to this simple but only place that made him feel at ease. Brother. Yuichiro's smile was like a fire, melting the heavy snow hanging on Ichiro. Regardless of his frozen hands and feet, Yuichiro happily rushed to his brother. Ichiro raised one hand and pressed his brother's head accurately. He scolded, "Are you stupid? It's so cold outside, stupid, stupid." While speaking, Ichiro pushed his brother into the house. The warm fire swept away the cold in an instant, as if the snow and wind had nothing to do with the two brothers. Yuichiro didn't care about his frozen hands, and brought out the hot food with a smile. The so-called dishes were just wild vegetables picked in autumn, and even salt was not added. "Brother, eat." Yuichiro immediately pushed the meal to his brother, and then said with a smile, "Brother, happy birthday." Yoshiro took a bite of the meal and responded expressionlessly, "Not happy at all, you idiot. I was almost robbed today." Yuichiro lowered his head a little disappointed. He knew that his brother hated him very much. If he wasn't a burden, his brother would definitely be much better than now. Yoshiro also noticed that his brother was disappointed, and sighed secretly. This child was too simple, just like his father. How would he live without me in the future? Yoshiro only ate one bite of wild vegetables throughout the whole process, and pushed the rest to Yuichiro. After dinner, Yuichiro ran to wash the dishes. When Yuichiro finished washing the dishes, he found that there was an extra piece of something he had never seen on the table. He stared at the cake for a long time, like a curious child. However, a sweet smell flowed into his brain through his nasal cavity, and Muichiro couldn't help but taste it. He then remembered that this was the cake his friends in town had mentioned, and that parents would only buy it for birthdays. But it was a pity that he didn't have parents. Muichiro soon found the small note next to the cake, with the words written crookedly. "Happy birthday, you idiot." The originally disappointed Muichiro instantly showed a happy smile. He only took a small bite, and then excitedly brought such a small piece of cake to his brother's door. Muichiro knocked on the door gently and whispered, "Brother, you also have a bite. The cake is very sweet, come and eat it quickly." Muichiro called for a long time, but Yalang ignored him completely. "Get out of here, don't let me sleep. I've eaten, go eat it over there." Facing his brother's scolding, Muichiro was not unhappy at all. He knew that his brother must not have eaten, and he still knocked on the door. Suddenly, the door opened, and Yuichiro looked a bit ferocious and bit off a small piece of cake. "Is this okay? Get out of here and go to bed." Bang! The door was closed, and Muichiro walked to the stove with the cake. A cold winter night, a shaky cottage, a small and pitiful strawberry cake, and 2 distressed children. Cuckoo! Cuckoo! The cuckoo's crisp and smart call took away the cold winter and brought warm spring. Muichiro worked hard to chop firewood in the yard, and Yuichiro sat in the yard in a daze. Yuichiro's face was filled with a sorrow that did not belong to this age. It was the sorrow of being trapped by life. Yuichiro liked winter very much because firewood could be sold, and at the same time he hated spring because it was more difficult to make money. After thinking for a long time, Yuichiro decided to try his luck in the mountains. He warned, "Stupid, take good care of the house." Muichiro put down the rusty axe and nodded obediently, "Got it, brother." Not long after Ichiro left, Yubayashiki Amini arrived to his family. Perhaps he had never seen such a beautiful person before. Muichiro exclaimed like a bumpkin, "What a beautiful sister." Yubayashiki Amini also noticed the ragged Muichiro, and she smiled and asked, "Little friend, I'm lost, can I sit at your house?" "Okay, my sister will go get a stool." Looking at the hurried Muichiro, Yubayashiki Amini showed a gratified smile, worthy of being the descendant of the first generation of breathing swordsmen, so kind. However, the neatly arranged firewood and rusty axes attracted her attention. Yubayashiki Amini was a little surprised that this child only used rusty iron tools to split the wood piles so neatly. Just when Yubayashiki Amini was lost in thought, Muichiro put the chair at her feet, and he even wiped it with his sleeves considerately. Because just from the clothes, it can be seen that this sister's family background is much better than his own. "Sister, sit down, I'll continue chopping wood." "Thank you." I saw Muichiro raised the rusty axe, and with one blow, the more than 20 centimeter high woodpile was split in 2. Yubayashiki Amini was amazed. Is this the so-called talent? Unaware of the strength, it comes from the talent of countless generations ago. Yubayashiki Amini quietly watched Muichiro chop the wood, and he handed over a handkerchief to wipe the sweat of the other party. Then he took out a string of special food of the Demon Slayer core, candied haws. Looking at the red and shiny new thing, Muichiro's curious big eyes sparkled. "This is a candied haws, sour and sweet, it can be regarded as a special delicacy of the Demon Slayer core. Give it to you as a thank you gift." "Hey!" Muichiro retreated again and again, and his brother told him that he could not accept things from strangers. "Don't worry, I'm not a bad person. My purpose of coming here is to invite you and your brother to join the Demon Slayer Corps, but it's not mandatory." Yubayashiki Amini hurriedly explained, but she felt more sad and loving. This child is too young and too sensible, so sensible that it makes people feel distressed. Muichiro's little head was full of doubts. Demon Slayer Corps. Chapter 92. Demon Slayer Corps, that is a story about courage and protection. Perhaps because she told too many bedtime stories, Yubayashiki Amini's wording was particularly attractive. Unconsciously, Muichiro was fascinated by the story of the Demon Slayer Corps. The evil ghosts who eat people and the people who fight in the dark are so powerful. Is the breathing method really that powerful? "Sister, didn't you say that the neck of the ghost is as hard as steel?" "Of course, the swordsmen who use the breathing method are very powerful. You 2 brothers are the descendants of the first breathing swordsman. You are the descendants of heroes. Of course, I won't force you. After all, it's too dangerous to kill demons." Muichiro's young mind seemed to have experienced a storm. Since his parents passed away, the words he heard most were "jinx" and "little beggar." It was also because of this that he and his brother moved to a sparsely populated area. Am I the descendant of a hero? That sounds awesome. But can I protect others? Muichiro looked at his calloused hands, and there was no confidence in his eyes. Yubayashiki Amane immediately gave Muichiro a warm hug. Her gentle voice was like a cuckoo in the forest, with a healing breath. Don't doubt yourself. You are living bravely in the world, which is amazing, kid. Hey! Auntie, who are you? If you don't leave my house, I'll do it. What demon slayer core, what demon slayer? Get out of here! Uchiro stared at Yubayashiki Amane with a ferocious face. He came back when she was talking about the demon slayer core. It was the greatest kindness of Uchiro to let her finish. Auntie, if you don't leave, I'll chop you with a hatchet. It's not unreasonable for Yuichiro to be so vigilant. After all, some human traffickers like to pick on children like them, and they are the best at sweet talk. What demon slayer core? It doesn't sound like a serious organization. It's all about fighting and killing. Muichiro is still a child. Brother, sister is not a bad person. Muichiro retorted. Yuichiro's mouth twitched slightly. This idiot dared to talk back. It's amazing. Yuichiro pulled his brother into the house, then pointed at the door and roared, "Get out of my house, we can't join the Demon Slayer Corps." Seeing that Yubayashiki Amane was still indifferent, Yuichiro directly picked up the bucket beside him, without any hesitation, and poured all the water on Yubayashiki Amane. Ichiro threw the bucket heavily in front of Yubayashiki Tenon, and then warned, "If you don't leave, it won't be the ground that will be hurt." Muichiro used all his strength to push open the door, and pushed his brother away. He pointed at Ichiro and raised his voice a few points, "Brother, you've gone too far. My sister just got lost, you shouldn't have splashed her." Ichiro immediately exploded. He worked hard to earn money to support his family, but this guy actually yelled at him for an outsider. Ichiro yelled at his brother for the first time, "What are you thinking? You are a waste. Muichiro's woo means useless woo, why do you participate, with your life?" Then there was a bang, and Ichiro slammed the door and went into the house. Ichiro's voice like a volcanic eruption came from the house, "Get out, you stranger, get out, you have led Muichiro astray." Yubayashiki Tenon sighed secretly, it seems that this brother doesn't trust outsiders very much. Yes, if a stranger suddenly broke into my life, maybe I would be similar to him. However, Yubayashiki Amane saw hostility in Ichiro's eyes, which was hostility towards this world. Yubayashiki Amane stood up and bowed deeply in the direction of the wooden house. She said apologetically, "Sorry, I bothered you." "Sister, I'm sorry." "Brother, he is not like this usually." Muichiro's eyes became a little dim, and the only light left in the boy's eyes also disappeared. Muichiro leaned against the firewood pile, his eyes moist. Ichiro's words still echoed in Wei's ears, "Muichiro's nothing is useless nothing. Am I really a waste in my brother's heart? I am really a burden." The two brothers who rely on each other to survive in the world quarreled for the first time in their lives, just because of a stranger. Yubayashiki Amane walked slowly towards the nearest Fujiya. It seems that it is difficult to persuade the brothers. But she smiled in relief. This was the result she wanted. At least the brothers could live safely. What the hell, it is better not to contact. "Oh my god, sister-in-law, have you just come back from the spring swimming?" The dusty Kiritani Sento was shocked. He had just returned from the mission and was told by the boss that he had found a pair of descendants of the first-generation swordsman. Kiritani Sento didn't think about it and ran here without stopping. Maybe others don't know, but Kiritani Sento knows that the brothers are the Tokaido brothers, the descendants of the upper string one. It's just that the ending of these brothers is not very good. The family was attacked by demons, the elder brother died, and the younger brother lost his memory. "It's Rabbit. I just visited the brothers. The elder brother is not easy to get along with." Yubayashiki Amane probably guessed that her husband had told Rabbit about the relevant matters. Maybe they don't really want to join the Demon Slayer Corps. Kiritani Sento was not surprised at all. After all, Muichiro's personality after losing his memory was inherited from his brother, and his mouth was as poisonous as Obanai. But it's quite pitiful to think about it. After his brother died, he unconsciously lived with his brother's personality. It feels like his brother is still alive. Since he knew, Kiritani Sento would never let any of the brothers die. He has long been immune to the poisonous words, after all, he has to endure the poisonous words of Obina every day. Sister-in-law, please say hello to the boss for me. I will take care of the two brothers' affairs. Yubayashiki Amino was not polite either. After all, the couple had long regarded the rabbits as their own family. Then thank you for your hard work. Kiritani Sento washed his face casually and ran to the town to sell a lot of things, even tents and other outdoor survival equipment. He didn't know when the two brothers were attacked by the ghost. Since he didn't know, he would just wait and it would be over. As long as it wasn't Muzan and Kokushibo, Kiritani Sento felt that he could handle it. After finishing this matter, Kiritani Sento still had two things to do, one was to find Tanjiro and the other was to find Pig Pig. It's a pity that Taromaru can't fly all over Japan. Finding two people in this vast world is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Kiritani Sento is too lazy to think about it. Just save whoever you meet. Chapter 93. Suddenly, a white and tender little hand patted Kiritani Sento's left shoulder. He turned his head and found nothing. Ah! Stupid rabbit, I'm here. As soon as the voice fell, Koko Shinobu poked her head out from the right, and Kiritani Sento was reflected in her lavender eyes. She covered her mouth and laughed, like a flower about to bloom. Ha ha ha! Rabbit, are you going to have a picnic? Why is there another pot? Kiritani Sento knocked on the big pot on his chest, looking confident, and he said confidently, I will conquer those two little guys with my cooking skills. After chatting for a long time, Kiritani Sento realized why Shinobu was there too. Shinobu, what are you doing? Shinobu Koko took the chopping board, put her hands behind her back, and ran forward with a hop and skip. She shouted, the master was afraid that boys were not careful enough, so he sent me to help. Sento Kirigaya nodded and gave a thumbs up to the Demon Slayer Corps. The boss still understood me. I guess the boss also expected that his sister-in-law would not succeed. But as the descendant of the first generation of breathing swordsmen, this family is probably the only one left in the world. Shinobu Koko suddenly turned her head while walking. She stared at Sento Kirigaya curiously, her cheeks trembling, and said, Rabbit, you said that it must be amazing to be able to pass down for hundreds of years. Sento Kirigaya nodded. It was indeed not easy. Under the strict investigation and killing of the scum boss and Kokushibo, everything related to the sun-breathing and the first-generation swordsman was basically extinct. It can be seen how deep an impression Yoriichi left on the two. However, Kiritani Sento immediately showed a sly smile, staring at Koko Shinobu with a lecherous look, and teased, why don't we inherit one too? Koko Shinobu, who didn't react, smiled and nodded, and answered readily, okay. However, Koko Shinobu immediately looked at Kiritani Sento with a vigilant look. She grabbed Kiritani Sento's ear, and said kindly, inherit what? Kiritani Sento was completely fearless, and said with a smile, inherit a child. You lecherous rabbit. While playing, the two came to the wooden house of Tokaido's brothers. Kiritani Sento put down the equipment in his hand and checked it again. It was almost the same as what his sister-in-law described. Just then, Yuichiro ran out with a hatchet, and he saw the two people from a distance. Hey! Didn't I tell you to get out? Why are you here again? Muichiro and I will never join the damn Demon Slayer Corps. Kiritani Sento was setting up the tent while listening to Yuichiro's cursing voice, which was not affected at all. After setting up the tent, Kiritani Sento smiled and greeted him, hey! My dear neighbor, hello! My name is Kiritani Sento, and this is my girlfriend, Koko Shinobu. We are camping here for the time being, don't you mind? Looking at the other party's harmless appearance, Yuichiro was speechless for a moment. After all, he was indeed outside the yard and he had no control over it. Ichiro raised his hatchet and drew a line outside the fence. He said fiercely, don't cross this line, or I'll make you suffer. You can camp wherever you like. Shinobu Koko whispered, what a cute kid. Kiritani Sento looked at Ichiro seriously, who was pretending to be fierce. His bulging cheeks looked like a hamster, or a little tiger. As we all know, many animals are cute when they are young, and they are cute and fierce. Oh! Children will pee on the Kong if they play with knives. What if they hurt themselves? Kiritani Sento gently knocked the hatchet out of Ichiro's hand, still smiling. Ichiro was sweating profusely. He didn't even see how this guy came to him. If he wanted to do something bad, he wouldn't even have a chance to speak. Especially when he noticed the knife on the other side's waist, Ichiro's heart was half cold. Yuichiro could sense that this man's seemingly harmless appearance was hiding a ferocious beast. Don't be afraid, I'm a good person. I don't think so. I'm really a good person. Kiritani Sento explained seriously. That's what the traffickers say. Also, don't hug me, we're not familiar with each other. Kiritani Sento's mouth twitched slightly. Why is this kid so stubborn? By the way, are you going to chop wood? I can charge you twice the price. How about that? Don't consider it, consider it. Kiritani Sento lowered his head, with a smile between his eyebrows, and pointed at Muichiro, who was peeking around, whispered, It's not easy to make money by cutting firewood in the spring. I relied on this to support my sister when I was about 7 years old. Think about your brother. I feel your pain. I used to do this. Chopping firewood was the best way for Kiritani Sento to get closer to the two brothers, but it was precisely because of his experience that he wanted to help them. If it weren't for a group of kind folks, he and Sun would also be hungry. Orphans like them in the countryside can only sell firewood. Yuichiro was moved. What the other party said was not wrong at all. There was indeed no firewood to sell in the spring. In previous years, he and Muichiro would have been hungry. He couldn't confirm the other things this guy said, but only in terms of cutting firewood, only those who have experienced it know, and Yuichiro knew that he didn't lie to him. Koko Shinobu kicked Kiritani Sento away. In order to cooperate with Koko Shinobu, he even made a gorgeous 180-degree turn in the air before landing. Shinobu Koko spread her hands helplessly, Sorry, Rabbit is so friendly with everyone, I hope I didn't scare you. Yuichiro glanced at Kiritani Sento and felt very happy for some reason. After all, this guy always gave people a feeling that he deserved a beating. Shinobu Koko gently patted Yuichiro on the shoulder, and then handed a stack of money to Yuichiro. We paid in advance, we are definitely not lying to you, it's really camping, but we are just lazy. So the firewood is left to you. Help me. Looking at Shinobu Koko's sincere eyes, which were sincere enough, Yuichiro was shaken again. Living in hardship, he knew the importance of money, and being able to pay first showed that the other party was serious. Okay then. By the way, let that guy stay away from me, he doesn't look like a good person. Yuichiro pointed at Kiritani Sento who was lying on the side. Oh my god, kid, say it again. Yuichiro rolled his eyes at Kiritani Sento, and then returned half of the money to Shinobu Koko. I'll take this half after I pay for the firewood. Sister, if you don't lie, I won't lie either. Yalang picked up the axe and went out. Who wouldn't love free money? Chapter 94. Muichiro quietly came to Kiritani Sento, helped him up, and said with an apologetic look on his face, Big brother, you and that sister and the sister just now are all members of the Demon Slayer Corps, right? Kiritani Sento put his arm around Muichiro's shoulders and said with a smile, Yes, I am the pupil pillar, Kiritani Sento. That's my girlfriend, the insect pillar, Shinobu Koko. Muichiro looked at the two with stars in his eyes. The sister said that the pillars were the most powerful group of people. Can she be as powerful as them? Muichiro lowered his head, his cheeks slightly red, and he whispered, Well, my name is Muichiro, Tokaido Muichiro, brother he is actually a good boy. It's all because of me that he became like that. Muichiro's two index fingers kept hitting each other, he seemed like a girl. Ah! Shinobu Koko immediately ran to Muichiro and pinched his face uncontrollably. Ah! What a cute boy! He's just another angel. Sister, it hurts. Muichiro said weakly, but never resisted Shinobu Koko. They can charge twice the price for my brother's firewood. In fact, they want to help us. They are really good people. Shinobu Koko immediately let go and apologized, sorry. While speaking, she handed a candied horse to Muichiro. Here, this snack is super delicious. It was invented by Rabbit. Thank you. Kiritani Sento stood behind Muichiro and Shinobu Koko with an ant's smile, looking like a family of three. Kiritani Sento rubbed Muichiro's head and laughed and said, Muichiro, you are so good. No. After a round of greetings, Kiritani Sento and Shinobu Koko went to tidy up the tent. Muichiro stared at the two quietly. For the first time since his parents passed away, he felt warmth other than his brother. There are many good people in this world. Muichiro murmured. A beam of sunlight passed through the dense trees, like a mother's gentle touch, gently patting Muichiro. In the evening, Yuichiro came with heavy firewood, and the sunset stretched his shadow very long. Kiritani Zanto immediately ran over. Just as he was about to help, he heard Yuichiro's slightly vigilant voice, "White-haired bitch, stay away from me." Kiritani Zanta's mouth twitched constantly, and an impulse to hit someone rushed straight to the top of his head. "You arrogant little devil!" Tisk. Kikoko Shinobu hurriedly pulled Kiritani Zanto and whispered, "Calm down, rabbit, just established a good relationship." Yuichiro put a large bundle of firewood next to the camp of the two and walked to Koko Shinobu expressionlessly. Shinobu Koko handed over the remaining money with a smile, and Ichiro said with a smile, "Thank you, little dwarf sister." "Hey!" Shinobu Koko's veins popped up instantly. After taking the money, Ichiro walked towards his yard without looking back. Kiritani Sento pulled Shinobu Koko with a gloating look on his face, and comforted him, "Calm down, Shinobu, we just established a good relationship." Shinobu Koko stepped on Sento Kiritani and went into the tent with a dark face. She complained in a low voice, "They are obviously twins, why are they so different?" The night came as expected, and the moving flames licked the firewood mercilessly. Sento Kiritani sat by the fire, staring closely at the cabin in front of him. If Ichiro wants to make up his mind to leave here, he must let him see the horror of the ghost. After all, as the descendants of Kokushibo, these two will be targeted sooner or later. Through the dark window of the cabin, a pair of eyes sparkled, like a hunter in the dark night. "Yo! This kid is staring at me." Kiritani Sento smiled and waved his hand, trying to get Ichiro's attention. "Hey, you're still awake, little venomous tongue." Tisk. "This idiot. Boring big kid." A bang echoed in the silent night, and finally disappeared into the endless forest. In this way, Kiritani Sento and the Tokaido brothers have been neighbors for a month. No matter what, one of them will definitely keep an eye on the Tokaido brothers. Kiritani Sento also conquered Muichiro with his superb cooking skills, and Ichiro was not as repulsive to the two as he was at the beginning. At least the two can sit in the yard. Maybe the money is too much, and Ichiro no longer collects money in the later period. He only needs to earn enough for the brothers to spend. It was another quiet night, cicadas sang one after another, and the summer breeze came with a heat wave, and Kiritani Sento hid directly on the roof. He. Today is a good day, a good day. Kiritani Sento hummed a little tune leisurely, wondering why the ghost hasn't come yet. There must be a time limit for waiting for something to happen. Who can wait for something to happen for a month? Suddenly, a pair of green dim lights lit up in the forest, and the invisible murderous aura pierced the quiet night like a sharp arrow. So many people! Ha ha ha, dinner is ready! A figure flashed across the forest like lightning, and the burning bonfire was extinguished in an instant. A gloomy and hoarse voice sounded, "Let me guess who won the prize." A huge sickle was swung across, and the tent was split in two. It was just that there was no one in the tent. Under the moonlight, the 3-meter-tall evil ghost was revealed, and a 2-meter-long sickle of death flashed with cold light, and green spots were imprinted on the blade. Suddenly, a purple flash lit up on the tree next to it, and the big eyes were full of resentment, and the air was filled with ethereal complaints. "I've been waiting for you, so miserable. Why didn't you come earlier?" Suddenly, a ghostly figure flashed in front of the sickle ghost, and Kiritani Xantas said with a hint of amusement, "Here I am, brother. It's time for you to perform." The sickle ghost looked at the two ghost hunters in front and behind with a blank face, and he cursed, "Are you two fools or sick?" But he immediately distanced himself. After all, these two ghost hunters didn't look simple. Wait, red eyes, silver hair, a mean tone, and a gourd hanging around his waist, it was confirmed that he was a silver-haired swordsman. You are a rare blood, a mouth-sucking swordsman wanted by adults." The sickle ghost could no longer suppress the joy in his heart. Kiritani Sento's face was livid. "A mouth-sucking swordsman? What the hell, I really want to kill this guy right away." Kiko Shinobu stood on tiptoe and gently patted Kiritani Sento's head. She tried her best to hold back her laughter and comforted him, "Rabbit, it's not your fault, it's definitely not a mouth-sucking thing. This, I know." Koko Shinobu clapped her hands in approval. "Rabbit has a strong psychological endurance." Chapter 95. I'm so angry, what do you think of me? The sickle demon waved the huge sickle in his hand, and the air blade generated by the friction between the blade and the air flattened a large area of trees. The sickle demon jumped several meters high with a light jump. Looking at the evil ghost that was like a meteor falling to the ground, Kiritani Sento took a deep breath and pulled out a knife. A vortex of blazing flames instantly enveloped Kiritani Sento and Koko Shinobu. Breath of flame form 4 wind of the flourishing flame. The sickle and the sun wheel sword made a fierce friction, and in just one breath, Kiritani Sento flew backwards. He was like a cannonball, steadily hitting the house not far away. Kiritani Sento's eyes revealed confidence, as if telling Koko Shinobu to watch me operate. The clouds of worry on Koko Shinobu's face dissipated, and she decisively ran to the side. There was no need to say more about the tacit understanding between the two. With a loud bang, Kiritani Sento knocked a big hole in the wooden house. Yuichiro looked at Kiritani Sento, who suddenly flew over with a confused look on his face, and swallowed the words on his lips. What kind of existence could defeat him? Noticing Yuichiro's eyes, Kiritani Sento sat up from the ruins and greeted him indifferently, "Hey! Little poison tongue, sorry to wake you up. It's unfortunate that the other party didn't kill you." Yuichiro rolled his eyes at Kiritani Sento with a look of disgust. The sickle ghost looked at the big sickle in his hand and then at the big hole not far away. At this moment, he felt that he was okay again. Originally, I thought that the swordsman who could be wanted by the adults was at least the top strength among the pillars, but he was so bad. Ha ha ha. The sickle ghost bent backwards, and the huge sickle rotated in the air like a windmill, leaving countless knife marks on the ground. Even so, it was difficult to express the excitement in the sickle ghost's heart. Killing the silver-haired swordsman not only gets you blood, but also a personal audience from the master. Promotion and salary increase, the pinnacle of the ghost world. Silver-haired swordsman, tremble under my sickle. The sickle ghost exerted force on his right leg, and the place where he stepped was covered with spider web-like cracks. He was like a missile, breaking through the air and shattering the ground along the way. The sickle ghost even ignored Koko Shinobu directly. He had only one goal, which was to kill the silver-haired man and get a promotion and salary increase. The sickle ghost rushed into the dark hole, and Kiritani Battle Rabbit collided head-on with him. The next thing was only the most primitive violence, the crazy output between the swords. Ding ding ding! The sonorous metal storm accompanied by the bright flames illuminated the whole room. Kiritani Battle Rabbit only used the first form of the breath of fire throughout the whole process. Ichiro stood there blankly. Even though the room was full of blade wind, this idiot could still ensure that he would not be hurt. What happened? The sickle demon was puzzled. He had just been knocked away by the first blow. Suddenly, a vicious blade flashed, and the blade wind was mixed with a little snake's flexibility. This was the result of Kiritani Sento's long-term use of multiple sword skills. It can be said that his breath of fire is no longer the purest fire. The sword art mixed in will change with the environment. In the blink of an eye, blood splattered, and the sickle demon's left arm was completely removed. Yuichiro had never seen such a bloody scene. His stomach suddenly churned, and he held the wall beside him and retched. But the next moment, something shocked his worldview happened. The opponent's originally broken arm actually flew up, and the target was himself. Yuichiro was terrified, and his legs couldn't stop shaking. Strange. Monster. But the arm seemed to have become an independent individual. He would not stop until he killed Yuichiro. Just when the arm was about to blow up Yuichiro's head, countless blade winds blew past, and the sickle ghost's arm completely turned into dust. Kiritani Zanto flashed past and gently patted Yuichiro's head. He said gently, "Be good, don't be afraid, I'm here, he won't hurt you at all." Yuichiro was stunned. For the first time, he felt that he had to rely on others. He seemed to finally understand why this guy lived next to his house, as if everything had been expected. Yuichiro didn't even dare to imagine what would happen without this white-haired monster. He and his brother would definitely die. Maybe that kind of monster is completely threatening to the white-haired monster, but it is an untouchable existence for himself and Muichiro. Tisk. Miscalculated. Looking at the silver-haired swordsman who was protecting the human cub, he finally realized how powerful the other party was. He was just pretending, but a wicked smile flashed across his face. The huge sickle swung at a high speed, and countless dark green blade winds gradually blew towards the four sides, spreading around. But the blade wind had no destructive power, but was full of corrosiveness. Wherever it touched, white smoke rose. The sickle demon said with a hint of amusement, "Can you still protect the two of them now?" Two? Kiritani Sento was surprised, but who knew that the sleepy Muichiro had already run into the house. What happened, brother? Yuichiro was anxious and rushed towards Muichiro like crazy. Now he was not afraid of anything. He had only one weakness, that was his younger brother. Don't worry. I will keep my word. You two will be fine. Kiritani Sento quickly adjusted his breathing, and then dozens of emerald green wind blades appeared next to the black blade. Breathing of the wind, 7th type strong wind, Tengu wind. Several spiral wind blades blew past, and all the poisonous blades were completely dissolved. The sickle demon was completely numb. How could it be possible? Hey! Now is not the time to exclaim. Your mission is complete, go to hell. Kiritani Sento's whispers rang in Scythe's ears, like words from hell. Scythe's heart was shaking. The gorgeous sword light drew a beautiful arc in the air, and Scythe was beheaded. It can be said to be Rabbit Teacher's second teaching tool. The grass on the grave of the first teaching tool was already 1 meter high, and the student that time was Xianmi. Kiritani Sento turned around and quickly came to the Tokaido brothers. He squatted down and took the two frightened people into his arms. Kiritani Sento's voice was very gentle, like a mother's lullaby before going to bed at night. Okay. Everything is over, you are safe. He breathed a sigh of relief. After waiting for a month, the fate of the Tokaido brothers was finally changed by himself. This time, Muichiro would not be left alone. Ichiro has a profound understanding of this world. The ghost story is true. The monster that can regenerate after losing a limb actually exists. If there is a first time, there will be a second time. If you want to protect Muichiro, you have to learn the breathing method. Hey! Do you accept disciples? Ichiro asked bluntly. Chapter 96. Kiritani Sento put his hand next to his ear and deliberately said, What did you say? I'm old, my ears don't work well. Ichiro's mouth twitched constantly. Could this guy be 16 years old? Ichiro deliberately raised his voice and shouted at Kiritani Sento, I said, can I be your disciple? Do you hear me now, old man? Kiritani Sento jumped aside and looked at Ichiro with a smug look on his face, as if all the venom he had suffered before was returned. Call me master first. Maybe I'll agree if I'm happy. Muichiro also made up his mind. He knew very well that his brother wanted to protect him, so he also wanted to protect his brother. Master, please accept me and my brother as your disciples. Muichiro bent down solemnly, and he was completely different from the cute boy he usually was. Kiritani Sento walked up to Yuichiro, gently helped Muichiro up, and said with a smile, I agree. Hey! Muichiro looked confused, is it that simple? The breathing method looks very powerful, can it be taught by preaching? Isn't it said that it is very troublesome to become a disciple? Where is Yuichiro? Now I am the master. Kiritani Sento smiled evilly and kept turning around Yuichiro. He knew that it must be extremely difficult for this guy to call him master. Yuichiro lowered his head and glanced at Kiritani Sento from time to time. What should I do? I really want to hit him. This guy. After thinking again and again, Yuichiro sighed. After all, he saved his life and was willing to teach him. People should know how to be grateful. Yuichiro grunted for a long time before he blurted out a word, Master. Master. Is it okay now? I'm here, my good apprentice. Kiritani Sento stretched out his big hand and rubbed Yuichiro's messy hair. Shinobu Koko leaned against the big hole in the wooden house, and couldn't help but smile. The mission was finally completed, and another knot in Rabbit's heart was untied. You two pack up and go home with me. Before leaving, Kiritani Sento leaned down and leaned against Ichiro's ear. He whispered, I say, eldest disciple, face your heart and tell the second disciple what you feel. From today on, you no longer need that thorny shell. The sky falls, and master will support it. Ichiro was stunned, and complained about Kiritani Sento in his heart. What does this guy know? No. He is right, you are really a guy who says one thing and does another. Ichiro's own voice sounded, but it was a gentle Ichiro. The corners of the boy's mouth rose. Yes, there is no need for so many thorns. Shinobu Koko hugged Kiritani Sento's arm and whispered, Rabbit, what did you say? Kiritani Sento gently scratched Shinobu Koko's nose and replied with a smile, let the two brothers untie their knots. There is no gap between family members. Rabbit has always been a gentle person. Shinobu Koko sighed, but she hugged him tighter. The Tokaido brothers packed up their things silently, without saying a word. The quarrel a month ago was still like a knife, piercing the hearts of the two brothers. Yuichiro took a deep breath and said slowly, "Muichiro." Muichiro was stunned at first, then smiled and replied, "I'm here, brother." I'm sorry about what happened before." "Ha ha ha." Muichiro suddenly covered his mouth and laughed. He didn't expect his brother to apologize on his own initiative. Yuichiro was a little at a loss. What was this guy laughing at? "Hey! What are you laughing at?" "I don't know, it's just funny." Yuichiro put down what he was holding and turned around to teach his brother a lesson. The next second, Muichiro suddenly threw himself into his brother's arms and shouted, "I have never blamed my brother. I know that my brother is doing this for my own good." In fact, when Yuichiro threw himself at him recklessly, Muichiro understood everything. His brother has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Yuichiro pushed Muichiro away with a look of disgust. He turned his head to the side to prevent his brother from seeing his blushing face. "Stay away from me, my nose is about to rub." "Oh. By the way, in fact, Muichiro's nothing has always been infinite, which means you have infinite possibilities." Suddenly, Kiritani Sento hugged the brothers from behind, holding a little head with one hand, and said, "What the eldest disciple said is not entirely right, one of you two is infinite, and the sum of you is infinite possibilities." Kohiko Shinobu squatted in front of the two, smiling like a flower, and she comforted them softly, "You have worked hard all these years. It must be difficult to survive." Muichiro raised his arms and said loudly, "But I am very happy now. Thank God for sending Master to us. Oh, by the way. I have always wondered, what is a girlfriend? Master has always said that Sister Shinobu is his girlfriend." "Kiritani Sento." "Yuichiro." The two looked at Muichiro in confusion, and then shook their heads helplessly. "Hey! Brother, Master, why are you two looking at me like this?" "It's okay," the two said in unison. On the way back to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, Yuichiro hesitated for a long time before speaking. He wanted to take a last look at the old man who had been helping him. Kiritani Sento simply cured the old man's leg. Since then, Yuichiro and Muichiro always looked at Kiritani Sento with strange eyes. After all, in the cognition of the people here, only the monster last night can use such an outrageous thing. Kiritani Sento didn't take it seriously, as these two guys still had a lot to learn. So, the Demon Slayer Corps still had one last pillar to find, and that was the super powerful beautiful girl, Kenroji Mitsurai. Because Kiritani Sento brought back two more people, Yubayashiki Yoya simply built a new house for Kiritani Sento, right next to the Rengoku family. Now the tradition of the flame pillar bringing back children has been carried forward by Kiritani Sento. Makijiro was very pleased about this, as it was more fun with more people. It wasn't until he taught the Tokaido brothers how to breathe that Kiritani Sento really realized what a genius was and what it meant to inherit the bloodline talent of a country. It took less than 10 days for Ichiro and Muichiro to blow up the gourd, and full concentration breathing seemed to be engraved in their genes. These two have always been different from ordinary people, but they didn't know it, and Kiritani Sento was the guide. In the courtyard of the Kiritani family, Kiritani Sento was lying on a bamboo old man's chair, with his two apprentices swinging their swords obediently beside him. It seemed that he had entered a state of retirement early, and he felt very comfortable. Chapter 97. Yuichiro swung his sword heavily, and a mist could be vaguely seen. Kiritani Sento suddenly stood up, a little bit unable to believe his eyes. He knew that these two were geniuses, but he didn't expect that they had practiced fighting spirit in just over 10 days of using swords. Yuichiro was very bored. He turned his head and looked at Kiritani Sento and said, "Hey! Old man, this thing is too simple, give it a little difficulty." Although Kiritani Sento wanted to refute, the title of old man had become a foregone conclusion, damn Yuichiro. Cough cough cough. Kiritani Sento put his hands behind his back and paced slowly, giving people a mysterious feeling. He felt that it was time, so let the brothers follow their original path. Kiritani Sento drew out the black sun blade from his waist, and suddenly there was a strong wind in the courtyard, and every move of the wind breath was on the sword. Type 1, Dust Whirlwind, Slashing. Type 2, Claw Claw, Kehu Wind. Type 9, Wiachuo Tiantai Wind. One after another, emerald green wind blades swept over, and although the wind blades passed by, the brothers Tokaido did not feel a trace of fear. Instead, the beast sleeping in the blood woke up, and the two of them couldn't help but wave the wooden swords in their hands. They didn't have the abnormal vision of Kiritani Sento's crescent moon Hitomi, and they couldn't remember every move. They only relied on the intuition buried deep in the blood. In just a few breaths, the two brothers were like telepathy, and their movements were 100% synchronized. The identical white whirlwind began to gather around the two of them. Oh my god, this is the first time, I showed it once, are these two still human? Kiritani Sento felt that genius was not enough to describe these two people. They were even more evil than evil. Standing at the door, Fuzugawa Shia widened his eyes. As the wind pillar, his understanding of wind breathing can be said to be the strongest in the Demon Slayer Corps. Have these two guys joined the Demon Slayer Corps for 20 days? Fuzugawa Shia kept asking himself in his heart, and the answer was no. However, the white fighting spirit gave people a vague feeling. Although the wind was invisible, the wind in the training ground was disappearing. Kiritani Sento naturally felt the arrival of Fuzugawa Shia. He skillfully pulled out an old man's chair from the house, and Fuzugawa Shia was not polite at all. Because Kiritani Sento had a new house, his good brothers would come to visit from time to time, and there would always be a place for them here. The two of them faced each other with fists and smiled at each other. There was no need for too many words between men. Master, yard, wisteria tree, light yellow wall, and the surrounding scenery and objects gradually disappeared from the vision of the brothers Tokaido. Ichiro felt that what he held in his hand was no longer a knife but a part of his body. Every time he swung the knife, his pores would breathe. All the cells in his body were cheering and jumping for joy. The weak wind rolled up the wisteria petals. Half of the training ground was dyed light purple. Kiritani Sento and Fushigawara Shia widened their eyes. They knew very well that their breathing was changing in another direction. The rhythm of that breathing was no longer the breathing of the wind. It was a self-created breathing method. After an unknown amount of time, the rhythm of the wind completely disappeared. The white wind stopped, like the lake in the afternoon, as quiet as a virgin. The grand tornado came to an abrupt end. Kiritani Sento and Fushigawara Shia both held their breath. Ichiro and Muichiro raised their knives at the same time. The knives stayed in the air for about half a second, then turned sharply downward, and the round clouds and mist fell. Ichiro and Muichiro disappeared on the spot, leaving only the ethereal clouds and mist. To be precise, it was not clouds and mist, but the glow of the sunset. Under the rendering of the sun, the clouds were covered with a layer of red. From a distance, it looked like a red silk falling from the sky. The clouds are the colorful light or colorful clouds that appear on the sky and clouds due to the oblique sunlight at sunrise and sunset. They are clouds and not clouds, because they are born with the blessing of the sun. At the moment when the clouds fell, a new breathing method was born. Kiritani Sento and Fushigawara Shimizu were the ones who saw the miracle. The Tokaido brothers ran out of the clouds with a smile. The boys could no longer suppress their excitement. Muichiro threw himself directly into the arms of Kiritani Sento. He shouted happily, "Master, Master, did you see it? My brother and I have realized the self-created breathing you said. How about it? It's amazing." Muichiro was like a person showing off a new toy in front of his friends, and his pride was overflowing. After all, they didn't have a place to be praised before. "There is A with his hands on his hips," he said proudly, "this is your reward for saving me. I created my own breathing method according to your request. Master, please give it a name." Muichiro's big eyes flickered, like dazzling crystals. Oh my god, such a bright sense of anticipation. The inner Kiritani Sento covered his eyes, it was too dazzling. But there is no need to worry about the name, after all, the rabbit is the man holding the script. Your sword skills seem to be as ethereal as clouds, but with a bit of the scorching heat of the sun. Let's call it Kashumi breathing. Great! Muichiro jumped and ran to the training ground. After all, he was still a child, always under the protection of his brother, and now with the love of Kiritani Sento, that innocence can be preserved. Yuichiro looked much more mature. He looked a little thoughtful, but he was actually very happy in his heart. Kiritani Sento hugged Yuichiro with ill intentions, raised his eyebrows and said, "Young man, you can also show your joy. I'm proud of you." Yuichiro pouted and complained, "Old man, even if you say that, I won't act like a child." Is there a possibility that you are a child? You can't judge people by appearances." Yuichiro gave a lecture. "Oh. My Muichiro is still the best." Sure enough, Muichiro without amnesia is the best. Muichiro and Yuichiro went to strengthen their sword skills. They roughly understood 7 forms, which was the same as Kiritani Sento expected. Fushigawashima Shima hugged Kiritani Sento, and he sighed, "Rabbit, you are giving people a chance to live, one is more powerful than the other. Envy me, white-haired hedgehog?" "Not at all, long-haired rabbit. By the way, what do you want to talk to me about? You don't want to drink again?" Kiritani Sento looked at Fushigawashima Shima with disdain, because he had been scolded for this many times. Fushigawashima Shima remembered that he had a mission. "You can only think of sake when you see me." Kiritani Sento immediately added, "And Heiji Cake and Hui sister." Fushigawashima Shima rolled his eyes at Kiritani Sento, and the always irritable straight man blushed directly. Chapter 98. Why is your face red? Kiritani Sento hugged Fushigawashima Minoru, who was really asking for a beating. Then, with a whoosh, Kiritani Sento was blown to the wooden wall beside him by the wind. Fushigawashima Minoru didn't realize what he had done at all, and said a little embarrassedly, "Rabbit, stop joking, it has nothing to do with Kane." "Hey! Where's the rabbit?" Fushigawashima Minoru was very puzzled. Why did this guy suddenly disappear? Has he reached such a strong level? Kiritani Sento rubbed his chest and shouted to Fushigawashima Minoru, "Hedgehog head, just a joke, don't use breathing techniques." Fushigawashima Minoru realized his behavior and said a little embarrassedly, "Sorry, sorry." Ichiro stopped the knife in his hand, his tone was sharp. He had wanted to do this for a long time, but it was too disrespectful to his teacher. "Brother Shia, good job." Kiritani Sento pulled himself out of the wall, pointed at Yuichiro and said, "You little bastard, are you going to rebel?" Yuichiro curled his lips and said, "Hey? I'm just stating the objective facts." After a while, the master and apprentice started to make peace with each other, and Shia stood in the middle with a helpless look on his face, and his voice was also very low, "Brother, master, we are all family." Fushigawashima Shia has long been accustomed to it. This pair of funny guys quarrel 8 days out of 10, which is simply too normal. Fushigawashima Shia grabbed Kiritani Sento's shoulders and pulled him into the house, while continuing the previous topic. "By the way, the Lord asked the 3 of us to supplement Fujishizan, and the Sound Pillar has a mission. Time is tight, there is only 1 month left. Hey! Catch a ghost." Kiritani Sento suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. Maybe these 2 guys will have to participate in the final selection, then he will become the next gorgeous brother? Is this the legendary change of fortune? Before reaching the door, Fushigawashima Shima changed direction. He pulled Kiritani Sento out of the yard and waved to the yard. "Your master is on a mission, remember to notify the others. Practice slowly, geniuses." "Oh. Got it. Master, Brother Shima, I wish you good luck in martial arts." It was a dark and windy night, and the stars were as sparse as the hair of programmers, emitting a faint light. 3 big men were hiding outside a cave stealthily, and there were still footprints of varying depths on the path leading into the cave. The footprints were twice as large as those of ordinary people, and it was obvious that they were some kind of beast. The tiny chewing sounds kept drilling into Xiao Benai's ears, making him very irritated. Xiao Benai turned around and yelled, "Damn rabbit, stop eating! Should I listen to you or the ghost?" Kiritani Sento waved his hand and complained indifferently, "Man is made of iron, and food is made of steel. I'll be hungry if I don't eat for a meal. Besides, if you didn't chop ghosts when you see them, we would have gathered enough people long ago. You are the kind that can't be stopped." Kiritani Sento's words were like a basin of cold water, extinguishing the fire in Xiao Benai's heart. After all, he was indeed in the wrong, and Rabbit and Shimai were indeed too hard. Xiao Benai also underestimated his hatred for ghosts. He felt uncomfortable when he saw ghosts but didn't kill them. Kiritani Sento ate the last hawthorn, not only walked out of the bushes slowly, but also walked into the cave with no end in sight as if he was on a picnic. Kiritani Sento took out a test tube from his arms, which contained bright red blood. The blood had an irresistible attraction to ghosts, and it was rare blood. The 3 of them had been observing this cave for a few days, and it was also the last target of this trip. As soon as Kiritani Sento opened the cork and poured the thin blood in front of him, a faint smell of blood drifted into the cave with the wind. But this insignificant smell of blood could stir up 1,000 waves. The sensitivity of evil spirits to thin blood is like that of sharks in the sea, and they can always smell the smell hundreds of meters away. Boom boom boom. The gravel on the ground kept shaking, and Fuzugawa Shia and Obanai put their hands on the hilt at the same time. Their mission was very important, because not only did they have to catch ghosts, but they also had to determine the strength of the ghosts, otherwise the younger generation of the Demon Slayer Corps could not be guaranteed. As the noise became louder and louder, Kiritani Sento withdrew from the cave, and at the moment he withdrew, a pair of blood-red eyes lit up. Kiritani Sento turned his head to look at Fuzugawa-san and smiled, "These eyes look a bit like Heiji Machi." Fuzugawa-san. As soon as Kiritani Sento finished speaking, the cave entrance began to shake violently, as if something was about to rush out. There was a loud bang, and a huge rock fell from the sky, like a meteor smashed towards Kiritani Sento. A crisp sound bloomed under the night sky, and the boulder was split into two, and behind the boulder was a muscular giant. "Damn ghost hunter, the ghost is still lingering." Muscle Ghost punched out, and Kiritani Sento flexibly avoided it. With just one cut, there was a crack deep into the bone on the chest of Muscle Ghost. "Ah!" Muscle Ghost screamed in pain, and his original arrogance was gone. He had a premonition that if the other party wanted to, he would definitely die. The previous cut was deliberately crooked. Muscle Ghost felt as if there was a pair of eyes staring at him from behind, like a beast staring at its prey to be slaughtered. Kiritani Sento made another horizontal slash, and Muscle Ghost didn't even react to his arm being broken. Because ghosts can regenerate, Kiritani Sento and his team's method of dealing with ghosts is very simple, that is, to chop until the other party can't grow back, and consume their physical strength to the greatest extent. "Run! I want to run!" The Muscle Ghost regretted that he shouldn't have rushed out when he smelled the thin blood. Who knew there was a pillar waiting for him? It has always been the case that only ghost hunters are hunters, not ghost hunters. "Go ahead. He's weak." The voice of Kiritani Battle Rabbit was like a concerto before death, sentencing the opponent to death. Two more knife lights flashed, and the Muscle Ghost lost his legs respectively. He still couldn't see the opponent's speed clearly. The huge body of the Muscle Ghost fell down, and the ground shook constantly. The Muscle Ghost was in a state of bitterness. It was outrageous that 3 pillars were dispatched to deal with a ghost who didn't even know blood ghost arts. "You despicable ghost hunters, how hateful! Let's fight one-on-one if you dare!" The Muscle Ghost roared madly. His limbs had not grown back yet, and only a lonely arm hit the ground. Kiritani Zanto expressionlessly cut off the last arm of the Muscle Ghost and stabbed it into the opponent's heart. "It's shameless, you have any objection?" This. The Muscle Ghost was choked. What everyone didn't know was that this beast was not the only one attracted by the rare blood. Chapter 99. Zayashe, it's Zixu. Ha ha ha. I want to become stronger. This figure was like a chainsaw, and trees fell wherever it passed. He had only one goal, and that was where Kiritani Sento was. Finally, this figure broke through the shackles of the forest, and his appearance was revealed. Against the backdrop of the moonlight, the iron blue skin flashed with cold light, and the long black hair had not yet reacted to the extreme speed just now. A tuft of black goatee highlighted his personality, and the black lines made his face angular. The golden sclera was shining, and the most important thing was that the iris of the left eye was engraved with Xyer. The beast that followed the smell of Zixu was the current lower string too. Kiritani Sento and the other two turned back at the same time, and they all sensed the murderous aura that was rising to the sky. Ruri looked at the 3 people, and his heart sank instantly. As a veteran lower rank, he had a deep memory of the pillars. After all, the pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps were dressed differently from ordinary members. He didn't expect to meet 3 pillars at once. He was so unlucky. The air seemed to be frozen, and it was terribly quiet. 1 foot of Kiritani Sento was still on the chest of the Muscle Ghost, and the Muscle Ghost had been chopped by the 3 people without any strength. The clothes of Kiritani Sento and the other 2 were still stained with the blood of the Muscle Ghost. For a moment, they didn't know who was the real ghost. Ruri, who was full of joy, didn't hesitate at all, and turned around and ran. He could still beat 1 pillar, but facing 3 pillars would only lead to death. Fuzugawa Shia was a little confused. He looked at Kiritani Sento and asked slowly, "What was that thing that just passed by?" "It was a damn ghost," Iguro Obana said with a face full of resentment. Kiritani Sento looked at the 2 of them seriously. He could see clearly through his eyes. "It's the lower moon too." "Oh my god! What?" Fuzugawa Shia and Iguro Obanai's eyes lit up immediately, like a bright light in the long night. Nothing could make these two more excited than the 12 moons. The two people were itching to catch ghosts. It was a torture for them not to be able to behead the ghosts, especially for Obanai. Before Kiritani Sento and Fuzigawa Shia could react, Iguro Obanai had disappeared. He rushed into the dense forest alone. Kiritani Sento had no choice but to hold his forehead. Although it was only a lower moon, it was too dangerous to rush in rashly. Hedgehog head, I'll leave this ghost to you. I'll go see the little snake. Kiritani Sento ran away at the speed of light, leaving Fuzigawa Shia, who was half a beat slower than the two, alone in the wind. Fushigawara Shimizu stretched out his hand towards the distance and complained, "Hey! I want to cut down the string too. You two guys skipped work in the middle of the day, damn it." Seeing that there was no response after shouting for a long time, Fushigawara Shimizu had to complete the task. Muscle Ghost took advantage of the chaos to move his body a little bit, trying to escape from this place of trouble. Fushigawara Shimizu turned around and stared at the Muscle Ghost angrily. At this moment, he was like a Shura from hell. Muscle Ghost seemed to feel the murderous intent that was close to reality. He turned his head with horror and stammered, "You! Don't come over here! Tisk! It's all because of you! I can't go to cut down the string! Damn it! I'm so angry!" Muscle Ghost was confused, thinking, what does this have to do with me, brother? Fushigawara Shimizu slowly pulled out the long sword at his waist, and countless black wind blades hovered around the blade. Breath of the Wind Type 1 Dust Whirlwind Slash. The arm that the Muscle Ghost had just grown flew straight out like a kite with a broken string. The Muscle Ghost's heart trembled. This guy's expression was even more evil than a ghost. How much hatred did he have? Only the miserable screams echoed in the endless jungle, accompanied by the howling wind. Windwheel turned back almost every 3 steps. Although the sound was very small, he heard the footsteps, which meant that the pillars were chasing him, but he didn't know how many pillars there were. "Hey! You guy, stop right there! Let's have a fair duel! I will cut your neck off! Aren't you the second lower string? Where is your dignity as a lower string? Garbage ghost, garbage!" Obanai's shouting and cursing were endless, and every sound was like a sharp knife, fiercely embedded in Windwheel's heart. "So there is only one person, then I will fight." The fear on Lu's face disappeared in the wind, and he tore off his left arm, and at the same time a large iron hammer appeared in his hand. Lower string 2, Iron Demon, possesses the blood demon art of turning the body into steel. Winder carried the large iron hammer and looked at the dark forest vigilantly. Even when facing an opponent, he had to pay 120% attention. Winder was very timid. As long as the number exceeded 1, he would definitely run away. As long as he found a little disadvantage, he would run away. His goal was simple, to survive. Xiao Banei rushed out suddenly, looking at the stopped Winder. He was very excited. The fiery red sword suddenly lit up, and a long snake phantom wrapped around his double-edged blade. Snake breathing 5 type winding long snake. Winder jumped down, and the iron hammer shook the air. There was a reason for being the lower string too. Even if he was timid, his strength was there. The blade and the iron hammer passed by at high speed, and the roar of metal exploded, but Xiao Banei's knife suddenly changed direction. What? Not the neck, but the arm. In just one breath, countless half-meter-long spikes covered the whole body of the windlass, and the red knife and the spikes rubbed against each other to produce countless hot sparks. Obanai bent back to avoid the hammer, but the hammer head suddenly stretched out, and the thin and sharp blade chopped towards his head. Ding! Obanai bit the blade, and he avoided the fatal blow with his quick reaction. Tisk, I've been seen through. Suddenly, an amazing fighting spirit burst out from Obanai's body, and the black breath made Windlass stunned for a moment. The second type of narrow head fangs was activated, and the big iron hammer of Windlass was broken into pieces. Is this guy still human? Doubts occupied Windlass's brain, and he had already thought of running away. Since the battle with Doma, the 5 people of Obanai have been qualitatively improved, and only the pressure of life and death can stimulate their potential. The third type, nest twisting, is activated, and countless blade winds slash at the opponent from various angles, just like a big snake hunting and wrapping its prey tightly. With a slash from Obanai, half of the left arm of the windbreaker was cut off. The burning pain made the windbreaker grimaced, and his face was twisted. However, the piercing pain was not important. The important thing was that the windbreaker felt that the broken limbs were sealed and could not grow back. How could it be possible? The face of the windbreaker was full of disbelief. While he was in a daze, Obanai's knife had already opened its mouth to bite his neck. Chapter 100. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of the broken iron spikes was particularly harsh. Xiao Baniai frowned, the blade turned sharply, the clanging sound faded, and Xiao Baniai was unharmed. He raised his head, and the windlass had already run away to who knows where. Damn it! This is the first time I've met such a cowardly ghost, and he ran away. Tisk! Xiao Baniai sighed and gently tapped Kabukimaru's little head. Kabukimaru raised his white little head, and his vertical pupils blinked. Hiss hiss hiss! Kabukimaru spit out his tongue to feel the change in the air, and soon his head pointed forward. Xiao Baniai took out a small piece of dried meat from his arms and fed it to Kabukimaru with a smile. Kabukimaru rubbed his neck like a cat. With Kabamaru pointing the way, the man and the snake quickly disappeared into the night. As soon as Obana left, Taromaru came over the tall treetops. He blinked his smart little eyes, then turned his head to the side and shouted loudly, "Master, there is a situation, there is a situation." As soon as Taromaru finished speaking, Kiritani Sento rushed out of the woods. He didn't expect this place to be like a maze before he came in. If it weren't for Taromaru, he would definitely get lost. Looking at the twisted trees and messy grass, Kiritani Sento said helplessly, "Where did this guy run to again?" But he soon found the key point. The messy trees extended in one direction. Obana must have chased the ghost. But what Kiritani Sento was very concerned about was that he had already fought with the ghost, so why did he change places? Or maybe that Lower Moon too was too cowardly and ran away when he couldn't win. Looking at the direction where the traces extended, Kiritani Sento was startled. He remembered that he seemed to have met a village along the way. "Taromaru, which way is that?" Kiritani Sento, who was almost lost, suddenly asked. "It's the south." Kiritani Sento's face immediately sank, and he rushed into the forest at the same time. He remembered very clearly that the village was in the south. He didn't dare to think about what a ghost who was forced into a dead end would do, especially there was a human village over there. In the vast night, a thin layer of mist hid the moonlight, and the sound of footsteps came one after another. After a whoosh, an iron spike broke through the air and attacked, and Xiao Baniai easily dodged it by turning sideways. One person and one ghost played a cat and mouse game. It ran and he chased, and it couldn't escape even if it had wings. More than a dozen iron spikes penetrated the mist and went straight to Xiao Baniai. The sharp blade flashed and the iron spikes turned into ashes. The red blade not only affects ghosts but also their blood ghost arts. "You lunatic! Are you done yet? Is it okay if I don't fight anymore?" Lu kept cursing while running. This guy has been chasing him for more than half an hour. Xiao Baniai's cold face was like ice in an ice cellar, and the cold air was pressing. He said viciously, "I can't sleep or eat well if I don't kill you. Damn, lunatic! Damn ghost hunters, when I become an upper string, I will definitely skewer all ghost hunters. Damn it, the more I think about it, the angrier I get." The bulging blood vessels covered Lu's body like creepers. Indistinctly, a village appeared in the mist. The windlass was like finding an oasis in the desert, with an immense desire for the village. The human village, I'm saved. Xiao Baniai also noticed the village, and there was a hint of worry in his fierce eyes. He must not be allowed to rush in. The first house that entered the two people's sight became the top priority. Windlass turned his head back and kept provoking Xiao Baniai. He said with a smug look on his face, "Ha ha ha, damn ghost hunter, I'm going to kill the family in front. So what if you kill me, remember that you killed them." The crisp bone-cracking sound was like a sharp arrow, piercing Xiao Baniai's chest. He always thought that he was a sinner, after all, his family was rotten. Only killing ghosts can atone for sins, but now someone is going to die because of him? Impossible. I won't allow that to happen. Ah! Baniai raised the sun blade in his hand, with blue veins like snakes winding up along his palm. He threw the sun blade at the windlass with all his strength. The flaming red blade streaked across the night sky and mist like a meteor, and the friction between the sun blade and the air made a buzzing sound. Blood gushed out in an instant, and the head of the windlass hung on his neck. Unfortunately, Baniai's knife was a little off, and only cut off half of the windlass's neck. The shrill screams resounded through the sky, and the windlass broke the knife nailed to the wall in anger, and he broke through the wall and ran away. Entered the house. The hungry winch immediately ran into the nearest room, and the sound woke up the sleeping girl. Is there an earthquake? The girl asked sleepily. However, the one who answered the girl was a monster, who said angrily, "No earthquake, but you are dead." The girl realized that a monster had entered her room. Looking at the head hanging in the air and the dripping blood, the girl's pupils shrank and she screamed shrilly. "Ah! Ghost!" Then, in the confused expression of Winch, the girl lifted the wardrobe in front of her with one hand, her eyes closed, and waved the wardrobe randomly. The 120-pound wardrobe was like air in the girl's hands, and it had no weight at all. What the hell?" Winch stuttered. It was the first time in his life that he met such a fierce woman. "Are you still human? What kind of strange power is this?" Windwheel felt that the other party was not a human being. But such a simple question hit the girl's heart, and Windwheel spoke of the girl's pain. Bang! The wardrobe that was still being waved suddenly slipped out of her hand, and then the windwheel was slapped and flew out. The girl sat on the ground helplessly, with tears in her eyes. She felt that her already bad life became worse. She was asked by a monster whether she was human or not. "I am really a freak. I will never get married in this life." The girl covered her face and cried bitterly. She was so helpless and sad. Xiao Bani didn't know what happened. He only knew that this guy suddenly flew over, so why not kill him? He took a deep breath, and the red knife became brighter. Snake breath 1 type snake slash. In an instant, the shadow of a two-headed giant snake appeared behind Xiao Bani, and the burning blade pierced the other half of Liu Lu's neck. Xiao Bani clenched the broken knife in his hand, and after several hours of chasing, he cut off the lower string. But he found that Liu Lu's mouth corners were raised, and an iron spike flew out at a high speed, aiming at the crying girl. "Don't think you can rest in peace even if I die.